Good afternoon, all, and welcome to another edition of the Sal Greco Show. And I'm your host, Sal Greco. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being in the comments. I see everybody popping in right now. If you're watching us on YouTube on the Finest Unfiltered Network, please hit that like, share, subscribe button, hit that notification button as well. If you're watching on Rumble, please hit that like button, hit that Rumble button. And if you're watching us streaming live right now on X, please hit that like button. Also, repost this if you can and share this out to all your friends, especially those in the low information bubble. And there's a lot of those people right now that really need to get informed in New York City quick and in and around the country. So speaking of the country, to start off, I don't know how to say this, but my hearts and prayers go out to Minneapolis, where this senseless shooting happened yesterday with this. What do you want to say? He's identified as a male now legally, but he wanted to be identified as a female. So you have a freak that when another freak that's hooked on drugs, big pharma, went into a Catholic school, and it's always Catholics, right? They're always doing this too. It's like the war on Christianity in this country, and it's and does another senseless shooting. I don't care. I never base things on religion or race or anything like that. But this kind of behavior needs to. This should be like. Unfortunately, I don't know. You could prevent things like this only because the FBI had this guy in the crosshairs. I mean, he's been writing a lot of stuff on the internet, but for years they were too busy chasing a bunch of trespassers on a certain day in D.C. that just walked in a building and walked out. And they wanted to make them into domestic terrorists. So that time frame, they let a lot of these kind of psychopaths go. So someone that should be under supervision, they should be watching their social media. They got to worry about a guy that went in a building on a certain day and just took a picture and said, "Isn't that nice to be here in D.C.?" So I wouldn't say there's a lot to blame, but definitely pointing fingers at certain agencies and heads of agencies, especially in the last administration, that fomented all of this. And Big Pharma, all these guys are heavily medicated. So, my heart goes out to that. It's a senseless shooting. This needs to stop. I don't understand, and if you have a mental disorder, then maybe you should just stay in a hospital and be there permanently for the rest of your life. I don't know what else to say, because they took the video down off of YouTube. It's sick. And really, that looked, not to go too much into my own faith, but that was the devil yesterday. That was the devil. That was the work of the devil, and you got to rebuke Satan. Let's play this poor kid that he was interviewed right there at the scene.
Shot in the back. He's in the hospital right now. It was super scary because we've never practiced it in the church. We've only practiced it in the main school, so we really didn't know what to do. We just got into the pews and he shot through the stained glass windows. Yeah.
And did you ever see him?
My friend ran, someone helped him run out. He saw him. He was wearing all black and he had a ski mask on.
So just shot through the windows and never came inside?
I don't think so. I mean, I was down, so I didn't really look up. I mean, he shot through the stained glass windows, so they're probably ruined. And
but do you have friends that got hit by bullets?
Yeah, my best friend did.
Have you heard what happened with him? Is he okay?
Yeah, I think he's gonna be okay.
That's an innocent kid right there talking about that. That's what matters in this country. Remember, we have to protect our young. So once again, my full condolences to everyone, all the victims there. You definitely saw a touch of what's truly evil. And these pharmaceutical companies need to be looked at heavily, because that's who's heavily medicating psychopaths like that person, who hopefully is rotting in hell today. I'd like to move on to something else, which is also a little somber. Was yesterday there was a member of service at NYPD. Another terrible tragedy. They passed away. It was I guess an incident on the Belt Parkway, not the Belt Parkway, the BQE on the Gowanus in Brooklyn. It was a hit and run. Okay, he was on a motorcycle and a box truck hit him, and of course the box trucks kept going. And I would hope that the NYPD throws everything to find the driver of this truck and why he would do that. And I can tell you this stretch here, because I lived in New York my whole life almost, but this is a dangerous part of that highway. And this is, it's like this needs to be investigated. Whoever you hit this officer, you hit this guy who was off duty going to work or whatever, then you need to be held accountable. I don't know how you could hit someone and just act like you didn't hear it. And then you wonder who was driving this box truck, if anyone tried to flag them down. But I hope the NYPD uses every surveillance, all these drones Kaz Dordry talks about, all this technology. You better use it to find whoever did that. That was a senseless thing to do. Whether it's an accident or not, how do you just drive away? I mean, you don't hear something happening. So, my condolences to that officer's family. And be careful, people on a motorcycle, especially BQE. Belt Parkway is dangerous too, but BQE is probably worse and one of the most, like a death trap almost up there. And the highway's falling apart, and the city has no answer to how to handle it, by the way. Doesn't matter who's the mayor. This has been going on for decades. They have no plan. Hopefully they come up with a plan, because other than rerouting all that traffic, I don't know how they're going to fix that part of the highway. So please be careful driving. Anyone who's either in the New York City Police Department or a civilian, when you're driving, just be careful on that BQE once again. Also, then we saw something in D.C. very recently, right? You saw a guy use a sandwich to smack someone, right? So he smacked a federal agent. And, of course, that was a former DOJ staffer, right? There he is getting arrested. So he got indicted. Obviously, the grand jury, you know what they did in D.C.? You know what they did? They declined to prosecute. They didn't want to go through with anything. The jury. Just so you know, I have a little bit of experience in D.C. My friend Roger Stone went through a Soviet-style show trial where anyone who was in the courtroom, and me having all this vast experience and all these cases I was involved in, clearly this case should have, I don't even know how you bring it forward. There were so many loopholes and things that the government did at that time, especially with the judge in that case, allowing things, not allowing things, saying you can't defend yourself. He was railroaded. And the jury was like seething. I remember they were seething, their faces, the people there. And D.C. is a place that's been almost radicalized. I mean, 96, 97% only vote one way. They also the same community that voted for a convicted felon to be their mayor for like 12 years, was a drug, got caught in a drug raid with prostitutes. They voted for this person. So D.C. is already in a huge low information bubble, and it's run by corrupt politicians. And they kind of like that whole, it's like almost like the Stockholm syndrome. They like being abused. So these cases where you actually see a federal agent being attacked in the street by a maniac that used to work for the DOJ, the low information people there, the jurors, that you're picking jurors out of this low information base, they're for that, just so you know. So in D.C., you don't get justice, just so you understand. It's not going to be fair. I mean, if you think that's okay, I don't. You don't ever do this to a police officer. You don't do this. You don't do this to any law enforcement. You have some respect. You may not like being spoken to. You may not like you being stopped, but it's always yes, sir, no, sir, and you're nice. If you get abused, then you got a lawsuit. But you don't do this. Look at this. What was he trying to do with that sandwich? Oh, so they refused to go through with that prosecution. That just shows you how DC operates. But I'm sure they're still trying to find a way to prosecute everyone that was trespassing on a certain day, allegedly on a lawn and all that stuff. That's what matters in DC. Putting all those cases first was the priority. So just be careful around DC, and it just shows you that maybe it is right what Trump's doing, having the National Guard there, because crime has dropped there, unlike New York City and other blue cities, right? So the next thing I was going to touch up on was this 69-year-old yesterday. Another senseless killing. A 69-year-old woman using a walker was fatally struck in the face by a stray bullet in East Harlem. 69 years old, innocent bystander, and I believe they had just gone to a store to get something in a walker. And the video was even worse that I saw. Struck in the head, and you're all being gaslit every day by the soccer mom, Jessica Tisch, and the mayor, Eric Adams, and even the chief of department who loves to go on these TV shows. It's the safest big city in America. We got this. No, John Shell, we don't got this. You don't got this. Just to let you know in your own terms. Crime is rampant in New York City. There's all kinds of stuff all weekend long. The Bronx is literally on fire, okay? And this is an area that's, not being reported. There's a lot of things not being reported. Remember, the trick here with Eric Adams is we have the lowest reported crime. You don't even report a shooting unless a bullet hits and enters a human being. If it strikes a building or you just hear it, it never happened. That's how the NYPD acts now, which is the complete reversal of years past. And it's not even the way you're supposed to document crimes. So this is what happens when you allow politics to infiltrate into law enforcement. This incident right here. Once again, my heart goes out to the family of this woman. This was another senseless killing that should have never taken place. Yet, we're all, I'm sure the New York Post will be fanning the soccer mom later today and saying she's the greatest police commissioner of all times. By the way, I want to remind everyone that from what I understand, there have been at least 10 NYPD suicides this year. 10 police officers of all different ranks have killed themselves. Of course, the soccer mom's not going to let you know that because I guess the New York Post has to write another, she's the greatest police commissioner of all time. We don't even know what she's done because she hasn't done much of anything, but let's all worship the great Jessica Tisch. And the next mayor needs to keep her because she's so great at things and she knows the job. She knows the culture so well. We need to keep her there. But before I have a guest on, I'm going to play a last video, which is the guy who should be your next mayor. The guy that should be your next mayor. And that's this gentleman right here, Curtis Sliwa. Without his beret, everyone makes a big deal. Let's hear what Curtis has to say about everything that's going on between crime, between the boogeyman, Mamdani. Everybody's, oh, no, he's going to become the mayor. Oh, no, let's go. Socialism. You're in socialism already. Let's hear what Curtis has to say.
I'm in the streets every day and in the subways. There's blood flowing up in the Bronx. You're not seeing any of these candidates all weekend long. They were doing silly things, lifting weights, eating potato chips. I'm dealing with what is becoming the number one issue, crime, public safety, and quality of life. I'm the expert in that field. These other three candidates have failed the public in that regard.
Yeah, that is your candidate, and hopefully he would become mayor and kick Jessica Tisch to the curb where she belongs, and all these clowns that run this police department. Crime is through the roof. You have suicides in the police department nobody wants to address. It's like, don't talk about this. It's ridiculous. Here's Curtis Sliwa. It says, thank you, New York City. We have momentum. Let's win this. Once again, Eric Adams denied matching funds by the New York Campaign Finance Board. He's not going to get matching funds. So memo to Eric and his staff. They'll love watching this show, even though they're small podcasts. You watch the show every day. You're not getting that money. Maybe you need to worry about the money you're stuffing into potato chip bags because you're not going to get any new people donating and getting matching funds. Sorry. So with all of that being said, I'm going to bring on our guest. He's a NYPD lieutenant right now, and most important that he's the president of the historic and well-known NYPD Guardians Association, which was once my own lawyer was the president of that, Eric Sanders. So without any further ado, let's bring on NYPD Lieutenant and president of the Guardians, Pat Gordon.
Hey, what's going on, Sal? And hello, everyone. Sal, before we get started, I just want to make sure that it's clear. I speak I come as myself, Patrick Gordon, and as well as president of the Guardians Association. I don't speak on behalf of New York City Police Department, so they don't come back later and say, "Oh, you spoken." I don't speak on behalf of the police department. I speak on as myself and as president of the Guardians Association. I'm on my own time here, and I'm excited to be here, clear up some things, and I think it's important that we have these conversations. One thing that we do, I believe, as a society, which I don't agree with, is we try to silence speech that we don't agree with.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the worst things that we could do, right? Like, we may not agree on everything, but I'm here to tell you there's a lot of things that, I'm certain that we do agree on. We agree on. We may say it in different ways, but I'm sure there's a lot of commonalities. And I think that that's why this conversation is going to be very important today.
It is. It's important also because, like Eric Dim likes to coin, he says opposition meets opportunity. That's what I think we have here. I mean, you have someone watching right now. I just mentioned Eric Sanders right there. Says, yes, that's the qualifier, Pat. Good job.
Listen, Eric is one of the smartest guys. I've had an opportunity to really watch him, see how he moves, and I've really gained a great appreciation for him and for his work. So, Eric, I know you're on. Thank you for your leadership. And listen, I can see his wisdom. But thank you, guys.
Yeah, and Eric is on a lot of different. He's going right for the jugular with certain things, and we're going to touch up on that. But what I want to start with you first is I don't know if you tell everyone a little bit about yourself. How long you've been with the Guardians? How'd you become the president? And a little bit about your time in the police department. How many years you've been in the NYPD?
Absolutely. So I have about a little over 13 years now in the New York City Police Department. My pathway to the guardianship presidency was I kind of saw things, and I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus. Just in my opinion, I saw things that I felt like, hey, I think I could do a little bit of a better job than what I saw being done at the time. And again, this is no knock to the prior administration. It's just, in my opinion, I was like, I think we should be doing this. I think we should be doing that. And I believed at the time that I could do that, do the job a little better than what was being done. And that's why I decided to run. When I ran for the position, I faced steep opposition because I ran against pretty much the establishment. It was like all the vice presidents and the prior board. And I won about 70% of the vote. I think it was either 70 or 72% of the vote in the election. I came in as the outsider at the time, and we came right in looking to work.
That was good. Yeah, I remember when you first, because the knock has been really, like I said before in the past, and there've been some things I've said. We'll say that last time I believe the Guardians was prestigious, and where it was at was the last day that Eric Sanders was the president, because the things that he fought for and advocated for in his time in the NYPD and then as the president, he has continued as an attorney. And since that moment, because then there was a little bit of stuff that went on behind the scenes, and then it kind of lost its luster per se. So you think now it's been a long time, a couple of decades after, and hopefully what I'm hoping for is that you now as a president could bring it back to that level where Eric was, where he was someone he's not a rabble rouser. He's going to go head to head with either management, City Hall, wherever it is, because he's fighting for the membership. Because the issues here are, you have a lot of members. They have a lot of, there's a lot of things going on. And sometimes the unions don't have their back. Like I can tell you one person here, I believe he went to one of the meetings in the Guardians, Marlon Bethel, who was terminated, and the DEA has been absolutely ostracizing the guy, completely ignored him. And the Guardians weren't around either. So that's
I believe it.
So that's an issue that we need to try to bring the Guardians back to a prestigious organization where the members could go, you know what, the union could sit this one out since they're very political. We have the Guardians having our back, and just like the days with Eric Sanders, that's kind of where I'm hoping that you could, and I know you got different people, you have a board and all that, but even Eric had at the time. But I think that's what's needed, because We have a lot of members, and we're going to discuss a few people that were in the police department that they're in dire straits needs of some kind of aid because the job has been and the media railroads on these guys, and they have no defense because not like the unions are backing them. I don't see it.
No, you're right, Sal. And, for me, one of the most important things that I try to demonstrate as best as possible, because I see this with all fraternal organizations, and in some cases now you're starting to see it with the unions. What they do is they try to make the leadership happy and hope that you'll stay quiet, and this is not a new practice. This is something I believe has been going on forever. And I've gotten to a point in my career and just in general where, like, listen, it is what it is. Like, I'm going to speak up for my members. As you guys know, I was out there with the PBA, some other organizations when the incident with the 31 cops. I've been vocal about the unlicensed psychologists. I've been vocal about a number of things because I'm at a point, and there's acceptance. Like, if I can't serve my membership properly, then I don't believe that I should be here. This is not about me. It never has been. In fact, when I was elected president of the Guardians, I already had special assignment. I'm like, I didn't come here to get special assignment. I thought it was important that I got it before I got there, so nobody can say, "Oh, this guy is here, trying to get himself promoted," or whatever the case may be, right? So I think that as long as presidents operate in that state, and this is the age-old trick, the same thing with the delegates, right? The delegate will get a good inside house mouth spot. Everybody knows it and they say it. And as long as they're taken care of, all is great, and I tried my best to not present as somebody like that. Right. And so while I still work in headquarters, I still work with the commissioner, and I got to be honest, the executive staff as well. We have had these conversations. I'm like, listen, the reality is it's my job to speak up for my members. That's what I was elected to do. And so there, maybe it could be a tactful way to do it where I'm not going out kicking and screaming. But the reality is it's my job to speak up for my members. And I think as of now, so far, we've had a respectable relationship in that. And it's understood practice.
That's what I would hope, because I just think the organization as a whole, it just needs to be brought back to the prestige that it once had. Because again, the unions, they're a little shaky because they like to play favorites. They are arbitrary who they want to help in certain situations. Like, a lot of people getting railroaded, and in others they jump up and down. If you're part of the club, if you know these guys, you hang out with them at certain nightclubs, you're okay with them. I see that. And it's just, I remember all those years ago, it was very much behind the members back in that time when Eric Sanders was in charge. I got two things before I'm going to show you a video of something we got to address. But Special Hagen says, do the Guardians have a 5-point plan, a clear agenda that substantially improves the lots of Black MOS?
So I'm assuming that they're trying to say improves the lives of the.
The lives. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah, I mean, listen. Ultimately, and surprise. Some people might find surprising. A lot of things that myself and my board we look to improve the lives of members of service totally, right? Regardless of background, because those things will help everybody. If it helps everybody, it helps us. So, but particularly, I mean, to answer that question specifically, my thing is I just want to make sure that my members are, the ones that are equally qualified, are equally given equal opportunities, right? So I'll go more into this as the conversation grows. But I would never be the one to advocate for an unqualified person getting something just because of the color of their skin, because I got to deal with them as well. And I have ran across a few people of all backgrounds. I'm like, how the hell did this guy make it here, right? But so I would never advocate for someone unqualified. But to answer that question, I'm always going to fight for members who are equally qualified to receive equal opportunities, and that's just about it.
I see. I also, Samara Cohen asked, how did or when did you get SA pay? Did you become a lieutenant special assignment? I didn't know that one. Is that true?
No, yeah, no, great question. Great. I did. So it actually leads me to 2 points. So I got special assignment as a sergeant when I worked in the police commissioner's office under Commissioner Sewell. And just so you guys know, you go back and check the records. everybody in that office. Sue was very gracious with promotions for her staff. And I think I actually got it after a few people who I got there before. But listen, I won't kick and scream. I did receive it alongside everybody that worked in her office.
I see. All right. So yeah, it's kind of like everyone got promoted at the same time.
Hmm.
So Marlon asks, does Pat believe there is a generational schism in the NYPD?
Yeah, I mean, to answer this question, what do you mean generation? Like the differences between the that's the way I take it.
Yeah. He
And
says baby boomers and Generation X versus millennials and Zoomers.
yeah, no, he's right. I mean, from what I can see, you see just differences in uh, work ethics. But you know, every generation has different qualities, right? Like, and so you do see a difference in things. And I'm not going to talk bad about one group opposed to the other, but you know, I've been a supervisor a couple of years now, and in my personal experience, sometimes some of the older workers understand certain things. They have certain qualities that might differ from some of the younger guys. I even noticed, like when we talked about the scheduling thing, I was able to lend some uh, I was able to lend some advice in terms of the scheduling, like the 12-hour tours and stuff. One of the things that so if it was done right, I don't believe it's being done right. I think a lot of it is because of manpower. But a lot of the younger cops, if you spoke to them, they were interested in longer tours with more days off, right? They weren't as concerned about, from the people that I spoke to, they weren't as concerned about overtime and stuff like that as the people who are closer to retirement. And so to Marlon's point, there is something there. And I know, like I said, one that stands out clear was scheduling. Like you spoke to the younger guys, they were concerned about more time off, and the older guys were concerned about making more money. I think they might have had more responsibilities. And so
Yeah.
that's probably why that was there.
I figured that because the job, I believe, is now more, there's more younger officers than they are senior officers, meaning guys that are, you know, like in my time frame. I think everybody's young, like 5 years or less on the job versus the veterans that had 15, 20 years. When I was on years ago, there were more veterans than newbies, we'll say, but now it's the other way around. So there's a lot of younger cops these days. So I know the disparity. So when you mention they want longer tours, that's good for someone with 5 years or less, but someone with 15 years or more is going, what's going on here, kid? You know, like, so I could see that. That's the
No, you're
difference
right.
in the
And,
generation.
and the other point with that is that also a lot of the younger people, some of them might still be at home, so their responsibilities are a lot less than somebody who has an established family. So, you know, they're not as concerned about the financial component of 22, 23, because of course to live in New York is so expensive, right? So these young people can't afford to really be on their own. So many of them are still home, so they don't have as much stress and pressure. So, yep, that's one of the things I noticed.
Yeah. PB asked another question. He says, Patrick Gordon, what is your position on reinstating police officers who were separated for refusing the COVID mandates?
So this is actually a really great question. I've been asked this a few times, and Sal, you know, we spoke about this
Yeah.
on the side. I wholeheartedly believe that they should be right. I learned an interesting statistic actually from Joe. I mean, I'm sorry for John Macari about what a low rate. Like we know that you can get a what do you call it? Oh man, I'm catching a brain freeze. But the you know what I'm talking about, Sal. Like what they give out the
On what?
man, you know wait, I'm trying to read. I'm drawing like a brain blank. But you know how to give out like excuses for different things.
Oh, okay. That's when
Yeah.
so back in that time frame, you were getting a religious accommodation.
Accommodations, yes. Sorry,
Yeah.
I was
Religious
So
accommodation.
it was surprise. Yes, thank you, Eric. Yeah, I was just for some reason I was drawing a blank. But accommodations, yeah. So you know, it was surprising to hear that the accommodation rates were so low because I have heard of people. I heard one the other day that was, in my opinion, I thought it was crazy. I don't think I should repeat it because I don't want to offend somebody who it may apply to. But they give out accommodations for a lot of things, right? And so to hear that accommodation rate was 6%. Anything less than like 50 or 60% was kind of surprising. and disappointed, but also I know how this place works. So, and knowing how it works, somebody could be, because I mean, and I hear it's not even a lot of people, right? It's not like, but I mean, I think that was just, in my opinion, I think that it was egregious. I think this is something that they should fight back and push back against. I'll be willing to write a letter of support, or whatever way that we can support. But you have to push back on these things. And honestly, I think there are more people who support that than them coming back than not. But the city attorneys are probably highly likely they would be afraid of, like, what would this open the doors for? Like, will we have to pay them back pay? What if there were some people who retire who maybe didn't want to retire? So I think that you may have people who support it, but then there may be like some legal things that, because there's always that end of it.
Yeah. I see. Maybe you need a different mayor who dropped the fight because the courts ordered them to reinstate and compensate everyone. Yet it seems that this administration wants to continuously fight that in court, and actually believe, if you break it down, costs more money to fight this than to actually settle the case. That's what they're doing. That's what it looks like they're doing to me. They've been doing this for a while. But so before John McCarry said this. So I think it's the start of one of the things we're going to talk about. John McCarry said, respect to Patrick Gordon for engaging in this conversation. What are his thoughts on the NYPD's hiring process as it relates to the psychological exam and the overrides that are being blamed on Inspector Anderson?
Absolutely. You want me to answer this now, or
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, no, absolutely, John. So, this psychological piece is a huge blunder that the department is going to have to deal with. And I can tell you, just from conversations with people, just from research, a lot of people don't know. I think that in the last 3 years, just psychological disqualifications and discontinuance alone has been over 6,000, from what I was told. So there was like 6,000 people disqualified or discontinued based off of psychological evaluations. And that is a real problem, because there's we see that there's no real standard in the NYPD. The other thing is, this unlicensed piece is critical. I mean, I sent you something last night. I meant to remind you earlier to take a look at it so we could share it. But like the New York State guidelines in terms of dealing with psychologists for onboarding for police officers in New York State, they give clear definitions. They give clear requirements, and they specify that it has to be a qualified psychologist to administer these evaluations. And when you look at the definition of a qualified psychologist in the state's guidelines, it specifies a licensed psychologist. And the other thing that's important to note is that every police department in the state of New York, with the exception of NYPD, interpreted those laws and those rules the same way. The NYPD is the only one that had a different interpretation of it. So, I think that this could really open the department for kind of very big implications here.
I agree, and I also think that what is your stance on the way Inspector Anderson has been made out to be the fall guy with this, when tracing this back now, because I had I had Eric Sanders on as this broke, and he's the one that brought this lawsuit on, and also Grace, who wrote the article from the city and state and invested all her time in this, and they left out a lot of things that then she came on the show and addressed. So what I'm seeing is Anderson's being made out to be the fall guy. They want to give him department charges, yet he's a guy that's saying, look, he only could do certain things. He's not the guy making the final decision, because the way the hit piece was written from the New York Post, you'd think that Anderson is the guy that did everything, when he's just a little cog in the wheel. When you have all these unlicensed psychologists running around, first of all, that's a whole, like, what they're doing goes back to the early 80s, because we have someone who worked as an investigator in the state education department board who investigated psychologists, specifically was in the NYPD, went there, then went back to NYPD. So he had over a 40-plus year career and reached the highest levels. I mean, he worked with Ray Kelly. He knows all these guys. And he never once heard anything about unlicensed psychologists in the NYPD, nor did he hear that there was an exemption. Because the only exemption for this that you can't be unlicensed is for education, meaning the schools. Now I think it's a health, also the mental health board. So the mental health unit and hygiene. So those are the two exceptions. It doesn't say the NYPD. So now you go back all those years, and I think it's also arbitrary the way they're trying to hire people now. What do you say to all of that? This guy Anderson is the fall guy, yet he really he's a tiny cog in a wheel and has really no say. And when he did, he was trying to do the right thing, and they jumped all over him as if he was a criminal. That's kind of what I'm seeing.
Absolutely, Sal. And so the unfortunate piece for Inspector Anderson is that he was, in my opinion, he was sent there to try to, right or wrong, try to get things to be a little bit more equitable. So, to your point, the Canada Assessment Division has systemic issues, right? They've been issues since the 80s and probably even beyond, but definitely at least since the 80s. We have people that go back and like, oh man, I remember these same issues back then. So this is nothing new. And I had a conversation with, someone in leadership capacity the other day, someone who has the ability to affect change in some of these practices. And, my point about this whole thing is this is not just a NYPD problem. This is an it's an American issue, right? The reality is that, we accept it for what it is. It's so have you ever heard someone say, well, that guy looks like a cop, right? Or we would say, like, at one point, we knew who was a cop because we were shaved. There was a certain look, right? So what I believe we have is that some of these applicants, I mean, I'll be honest, I've seen people, I'm like, oh shit, like they didn't look like what I know a cop would look like, but they were here, right? So I think what happens sometime is that these investigators, and I don't think, like I said, more often than not, I want to make sure that I'm very clear about this. More often than not, I think I said this to you in a one-on-one conversation. I don't think we have a lot of racist people out there, individuals who say, I'm against this one group, right? I think that what happens is some of our systems have systemic issues, and sometimes they're biases that we're not aware of. Like we all, like there's certain things that we can say, if I said this, who would you think of first? If I said that, who would you think of first, right? So it's just a way of life. It's just a way of living. And I think that sometimes we don't know how to separate those biases, right? And so I think those things become harmful because people may come, what we've been hearing is people are going in front of investigators or psychologists, and if they don't have the certain look, they can't articulate themselves a certain way. These things are being used to disqualify them. And so we're just trying to figure out, how do we make these systems a little bit more fair? How do we make sure that these psychologists and investigators are culturally competent, that they understand what's being presented in front of them? I'll give you one example, and then I'll give the floor back to you. I remember going to a cultural awareness training, and one group, someone told me from, I forgot which background they were from, but they said, in my culture, we don't look people of authority in the eye. We feel like looking in my eyes is like a sign of a challenge. So they avoid eye contact to show respect. But the way I grew up, I would look at somebody who's avoiding eye contact. They might be hiding something. They might be lying. And so if I'm not aware of that and I don't know how to deal with that culture, it's nothing intentional. It's just that sometimes these things have impacts.
Yep. I said all the time, the cultural, I discussed this with some of my other, friends I have about the culture, NYPD culture. People need to understand that. I think someone leading the charge does not understand that. And that's why you have some of the problems, but there's other issues underlining on that as well because of people that are in charge. So wrapped into this other issue, I have another question here, but it relates to this. It's all one big thing here with this. So Frankie Pagliucci, as you know, he's got a case right now regarding drug testing and the hair samples and all that, because it's that test is a fugazi as it is. So he says this. He says, and he also gave $9.99 to the podcast. So shout out to you, Frankie. I'll be having some espresso on you. I have some espresso on you later. Pat, just like the NYPD psychological assessments, hair drug testing should not be allowed in employment practices. Do you agree?
So yeah, so I believe Eric pointed this out to me some time back, and yeah, I mean, all these things are things I definitely agree. So to answer that part of it, but I think that we need to now see groups that people that have been impacted, and definitely start fighting these things one at a time. One of the things that I see is that not just the NYPD, a lot of these large organizations and agencies, they do things, and it's up to you to say, hey, wait a minute, this might be a little bit of an overreach. This might not be a good practice. And, the same way how everything is done, like the patrol guide, all these different things, people fight it. If there's a lawsuit or there's whatever, a judge will come back or a decision will be made. And this is how these things can be addressed. But to answer that question, yes, I've spoken to Eric about it. And actually, I think we might talk some more because it's very closely related to the psychological piece.
Yeah, because it affects the same. You're in the same bracket, medical division, and the hair test itself has been deemed. It's you can't present this in a court of law. They even say that it's not it's not even legit. It's not
Right.
legit. They mention that their own company in their own board meetings. The same company, NYPD's been using the same company over 20 years. Remember, guys, listen, there's a Detective Terrell, okay? He went through this. They were drug testing him every day. I got guys I know that were drug tested numerous times, repeatedly. Also, this test for cause. What does that mean? Does that mean, Pat, like, I don't like this guy, so I'm just going to call up. I'm Lieutenant so-and-so. Yeah, this guy's on steroids. Get him a test now. But he's not on steroids. You're just saying that. You have no proof for this. Who the hell are you? You're just some cockamamie supervisor that has it out for someone, and you decide that you want to do a test for cause. Like, I don't think that whole thing needs to be abolished. The way they go about it, hair test, I don't know how you see that. I see it as that's a big problem. And that's a way to get back at people, too. It's like you're weaponizing it.
Absolutely, sir. I listen. I wholeheartedly agree with you, and this is one of the reasons why I thought it was important to be here, because you guys don't realize, your voice, your advocacy. One thing about me, you may have seen, or I don't know if you know yet, I'm a fighter. I'm an advocate. And that's one thing. One of the things that I applaud about you. John, Marlon, Eric. You guys, listen. Even when you kicking my ass, I don't mind, because a lot of times I deserve it. But you know what? Your advocacy is what gets people on the right track, right? And when people know that, you're watching, you're going to be held accountable. This is why these things are important. This is why, like, these podcasts are important, because it helps people get it right. One of the things I'll tell you is just circling back to that point. They don't get things right a lot, right? But I think that, there have been times you guys have pointed things out, and I've seen corrected behavior. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe it was just enough light on it. But like these things are very important. And like I said, I'll even use myself as an example. You say, I was under fire for some things, with some words I said, and it's important. But you know what? I appreciate the ass kicking you guys gave me, because you know what? One of my mentors once said to me, he's like, Pat, he's like, good decisions come from experience, and experience come from past bad decisions, right? So you get your ass kicked about something, you're like, wait a minute, and then also it was a learning moment, because I was able to talk to so many people. I learned so many things from just who knew one thing could have opened so many doors, right? People pull me and say, hey, kid, are you aware of this? Are you aware of that? And there was a lot of things that I didn't know that I learned. So that's why I think these things are important. I think these podcasts are important. I think holding people accountable are important. And I'll always support it.
Yeah. So I know what you're talking about. I was going to get to that. So I'm going to play the video to everybody, what you're talking about. So a while back, as you know, Pat had this little, discussion or whatever we're going to say, and is that with the mayor and with Eric Adams, and regarding of people like myself, Italians. And I even, if you don't know this, I'm a board member of the Italian American Civil Rights League. We even wrote a letter to Eric Adams in regards to this. So let's play this, and that you could address this. So this is the infamous incident we're discussing.
Concerns that I receive a lot is a lot of black members of the NYPD says that it feels like black and browns are under attack right now in the agency, right? Mm-hmm. And I know we had some issues that happened a couple of months ago, but we know the agency is 180 years old, and it's not the first time they've seen something unfortunate. But it seems like the response, and this is not my words, this is the words of over 2,000 paid members. They said it seems like that the response is that all blacks and all browns are, we're all, it's not in to be black or brown, right? And some of the things that they use that's being used is some of the demotion of black executives. We had Tariq Shepard, we had Paul Gamble, we had some Latinos that was out, so we had Miguel Iglesias. So now I receive increased pressure, like, hey, what are you doing? What is the Guardians doing? Because it's just a feeling. It may be for a number of reasons, and they may not know the reasons. There's might be things behind the scenes that we don't know, but the appearance is that. The second concern that I'm receiving highly is it appears that everything is a tie now. Someone brought to my attention every promotion that we've had since January has had somebody with the last name, make a chief, right? And we've only had maybe 1-2 blacks make it, but it's a whole bunch of ties walking across the stage. And they pointed out the chief of the department is a tie, the XO of the department is a tie, the CEO of the office is a tie, personnel people. So they're like, well, we see one group running things, and this is the way it looks. And again, it may be things that I don't know, right? So, this is why I want to put it on you. And I know you're running a big city, like the police department is just one portion of what you're responsible for. And so we just wanted to put out there that these are concerns, and maybe you can help us. We can have some conversations because there might be things that people are not paying attention to, so we can put on a radar.
No, thank you.
Yeah. So there was a couple of things there. I guess and how it came off, and I know you had to go to. I know I saw you with the Columbia Association president, but a few things that actually factual were there were 3 people that got promoted in that little promotion ceremony. I believe only one of them was actually Italian. So it sounded like you were going after Italian. So to my Italian brethren watching, to my Italian American Civil Rights League board and everyone there, can you address that once and for all?
Absolutely. So, like I said, first off, I would like to extend an apology to those who were listening. Certainly you got to be held accountable for, your actions, remarks. But I'm a people person. I love people, and the something I want to point out is that the purpose wasn't to attack one group. It was to illustrate a point of what I believe. I'm like, hey, I feel like one group is receiving more benefits than others. And, like you said, you just clarified something that, it wasn't in that particular promotion. That wasn't the case. But to circle back around to, and it's connected to this, to Anthony, I feel bad because he was kind of put in a hot spot. Really good guy. He taught me some things that I didn't know. He's like, Pat, are you aware that we were the ones that helped the Guardians get your 501c3 paperwork? And something? I had no idea. And so I was able to go back to former Guardians president. Like, yeah, he's actually right. It was the Italians that freaking helped us with our paperwork. And listen, it's not that I had any issues. I want to make sure that that's clear. I had no issues with anybody Italian. I think it's the same argument. That's what I said. I think we say the same things, but just different ways. We just want to make sure that the most qualified people are always receiving opportunities, right? And not that they're either Black, Hispanic, Italian. Because what I see happen a lot of times, right? And it happens on our side as well. A lot of times what I see happen is a familiarity thing. I don't think it's as much racism as familiarity. A lot of times people who are in power, they're more familiar with different people for different reasons. And those people receive opportunities, right? So it may not be you necessarily saying, I'm looking out for this guy because I don't like the other people. It's just like we grew up in the same neighborhood. We have friends in common. We do some of the same things. But, I always try to look to argue or to make sure that we keep in mind, hey, like, don't forget, even though that's fine, you just got to make sure that you include everybody else.
Yeah, I'll be honest. You hit the nerve that day when I heard that, and a lot of my paisanos were very upset about that because not only that, you said that, and you see how it comes off, and you see the people in the comments are still. Yet Eric Adams, who's the mayor, doesn't stop to address that or say, "Hey, what are you talking about?" He's just like, "Yeah," like he's almost like saying, "Yeah, you're right." By the way, Eric would have his own hand in promotions, from what I'm hearing from the last 4 years he's in charge, and he had nothing to say about this. And to that point, people also think that you have this like you and Eric are like best buddies. So I don't know if you want to address that too, because a lot of people say
Yeah.
Pat Gordon's good buddies with Eric Adams, but
No, I,
tell us
I'm
the
glad
truth.
I'm glad you asked that, Sal. No, we're not best buddies. Listen, if I need to get access to him for a particular point, I do have a way of getting access to him, but he's not someone that I communicate with often. If I interact with him once every couple of months, that's a lot. And generally it's around things that are big ticket issues. But a lot of times we'll try to deal with the police department or the executives in the police department. And if we feel like, hey, this is something that somebody outside should take a look at, but it's very rare, to be honest. I mean, I know that might be the appearance, and I wouldn't say I can't reach him if I need to, but we're not like somebody that speak often.
Yeah. No, because I just wanted that. I know a lot of people, they're not writing in the comments, but a ton of people have asked me or whatever, hey, Pat's got to be really close with Eric. And I guess they kind of want to paint you as one of, well, you're not part of this crumbs crew / Consa Frito crew / table of success, whatever he calls this. You're not part of that circle. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Like I said, in terms of me, if I'm honestly speaking, I can get a message to him if I need to, but definitely we don't communicate, like that. No, not at all.
Okay, that was a thing I wanted to address just because of that whole incident. So I guess I can now calm down the board members of the Italian American Civil Rights League because they were very hot about that incident.
No, and listen, rightfully so. And that's what I said, listen, Tal, that's why I think these things are, again, important. I'm definitely something I feel bad about, but I definitely learned a lot. I'll be honest. It was a learning experience. And again, I'm glad that you guys did hold me accountable. So did several other people, but you know what? I think it was definitely something for me to learn from and to just improve. I'm not perfect, but I try to improve every day.
Oh, it's good. I mean, and if it ultimately, again, if it can, you live and you learn, but also if you can also improve, like I said, your own organization and bring it back to the prestige it once had. That's ultimately what you're trying to do. Is just you learn as you go along as the head of an organization. I tried this, that didn't work. Maybe I shouldn't have said that or did that. I'm going to try it the other way. You stumble and you fall. Why do we fall? To pick ourselves back up. But
Absolutely.
Special Hagen had a question. I don't think she said, has a demographic analysis of the people Anderson waived the psychological exams been done? And I could tell you from what I understand, the NYPD has refused to give out the demographics about the people affected by unlicensed psychologists. All the people that we don't have a demographic, they won't give out that number. I think, am I right? I don't think I've heard
No,
anything about that.
you're right, Sal. And one of the things I recently learned the other day, which I think is like mind blowing, is that they don't even the NYPD says that they don't, or based on what I was told, they said that they don't track, they don't have a race box on the paperwork. So they're saying that, oh well, just paperwork wise, we couldn't even tell you who's black, who's white, who's Hispanic, who's whatever, which I think is crazy because it's difficult to figure out. But when you go sit in front of the investigator or you go sit in front of a psychologist, they clearly know who you are. So, but what I was told, this could be wrong, but I was told from a pretty credible source that they don't even keep on the paperwork. It won't show you who's what background. So it'll be really difficult to figure out how many of this was disqualified opposed to how many of that. Because all you have is the doctor who saw you and the investigator who saw you. They know who you are, but in terms of paperwork, they don't really know who you are.
So the NYPD likes to keep tabs on people you stop in a motor vehicle, what's their race, race of people they arrest, but the race of the officer that's being assessed by psychologists, you can't write. That's what you're saying.
That's what it sounds like. Yep.
way to do accounting conveniently by the police department. Crazy 10-7 gave $4.99 to the podcast. Shout out to you. You're gonna give me a heart attack with all these espressos I gotta have. He says, this is not by any means an apology. This is horse and you could fill in the blank. So I mean,
No,
you got to take the criticism. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
no, listen, absolutely, listen, and he's entitled to his opinion. I try my best to make sure that people understand that it is, honest and sincere apology. And guess what? It's not just an apology, and I hate to keep circling back around to the same thing. But I think it's important to know I have had a lot of people who have been impactful in my career who have been Italian Americans. I've driven Italian American bosses. I've had people who are not black do more for me sometimes in cases than black executives. So, I don't know how much more clear to make it. Listen, everybody's entitled to their opinion. But I know me, I know my heart. I'm a people person, love dealing with people, definitely don't like hurting people or making people feel away. And again, I'll apologize a million times. And, if somebody feels impacted, I can't discount his feelings, right? So it's not for me to say his feelings are not legitimate, and I hope that over time I can prove myself to him or any other people who may feel is not sincere. Over time, I'm looking forward to proving myself.
Yeah, I mean that's all you could do. But like I said, it's a rough crowd out there. I mean,
No,
even
absolutely. But you know what?
myself.
You can't discount people. You can't discount people's feelings, and I really don't discount it. Like I said, it may not be just this. It may be over time. I may be able to kind of show and prove myself to them. But uh, I know, how I feel about it, and I'm looking forward to doing whatever it takes to proving that to whoever needs, more clarification.
That's fair enough. Eric Sanders chimed in. He said, "Whoops. Well, that's an admission that the department isn't following the UGESP, aka the Uniform Guidelines for Employee Selection Procedures, which is that's another problem that they're having with an entire thing with the psychologist because they're not following the uniform guidelines, and it's very apparent. It's very apparent.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's so many things here, and like I said, this piece there. You talk to people who work there. I've been fortunate enough to have a number of members who either still work or have worked in that hiring the candidate assessment division, and they'll tell you there's so many issues. The psychological piece, it scratches the surface, right? But there's so many issues there, and there's like a litany of things. Even the way that these cases are looked at, these cases are reviewed. There's a lot of issues there. So he's right.
Yeah. Marlon Bethel says, people will forgive you if you start speaking out about the nonsense, Pat. It's that easy.
Absolutely, Marlon. Listen, there's so many fights out there. I talked to some of the other fraternal presidents, and there's a lot of things going on. But he's right. But there's so many fights out there to get involved in. Sometimes you just got to pick and choose. Okay, which fight am I going to deal with today? Because it does become a lot. Like my phone rings nonstop. In fact, while we're here, I've been getting a number of text messages, calls. People are constantly calling you with issues and scenarios and situations, and so a lot of times it's like, what can I deal with today? Because you do get a lot of things that come in.
Yeah. And Eric Sanders said, uniform guidelines on employee selection procedures. That's what ESP stands for. So here's one from Momo, $9.99 to the Sal Greco show. I'm going to be having espresso. I mean, I'm going to need to go to the hospital by the time you all done with me here. Can you please talk about candidates who were forced to resign in 24 hours or they would get terminated, then made them they were stripped of their vest, ID, department phone, Metro card, etc., and escorted out.
Yeah, that was a huge problem, man. As you may recall, I stood shoulder to shoulder with the PBA and the Hispanic Society and some other fraternals. Uh, that was kind of like it was really shocking to see an action like that. That was taken so swiftly. But I take my hat up to Pat Hendry. He fought. He really fought, and we tried our best to support him in that. Um, yeah, I think from what I was told, this decision or recommendation came from the city's law department more so than the NYPD. Once the NYPD submitted what they have found to them, and I don't know how true any of it is, but that's what we were told. Like, hey, the law department ordered this. I think that, and I actually said it in one of my interviews with a reporter. I'm like, this was one of the most egregious responses that I've seen. You know, I was later told, well, hey, NYPD, this wasn't our decision. This was the law department. But I'm happy that, you know, through fighting, through advocacy, these, you know, they received a temporary restraining order, which allowed them to keep their jobs up until September, where they go back to court. I was in the courtroom, so, you know, I'm not, you know, telling you something that somebody told me. I was in the courtroom, and the city was so unprepared in their response. You know, like, one of the things that the city's lawyer said was, oh, the investigation into the matter against Inspector Anderson was incomplete at the time of the court appearance. And so the judge, that was one of her decisions. That was one of the reasons for her, the basis for her decision. She's like, well, if the investigation is incomplete against the inspector, then how do you know he acted unilaterally? Like, how do you know at the end of your investigation, you're not going to find that there were other people involved in this decision? And the city's attorney couldn't even respond. And, you know, so I believe that that was one of the bases for her decision, because she was like, you guys came with an incomplete argument. Like, you know, so.
I see. Well, that's fair enough, because you've been, you know, you were standing with those unfortunate 31 souls that are, I think, with this whole other issue that came out with the unlicensed psychologist. I want to see, when's the next court day? Is it this month in
I believe
September?
it's September, either 15th or 16th. I'll get it for sure and send it over to you. It's either the
Yeah.
15th or the 16th of September.
So I'm sure you'll be out there, and you'll be with all the cops.
Absolutely, Sal. And then another important thing to note, I'm not sure if anyone who's been on the show had the opportunity to clarify this. You know, the city put some things out about these young people, and we had the opportunity to meet a number of them. A lot of that stuff was definitely blown out of context. I wouldn't call them straight lies. Like, there were 31 people that was impacted. They were specifically speaking about 3 people, right? When we spoke to people, there was 3 people. Like, the guy with all the driving stuff was one person. You know, I think he had something like 8 moving violations. He had a suspended license, and he was collared for driving with a suspended license. And I don't defend his actions. You know, whether he should or not shouldn't be here. That's that one person. You know, I just want to clarify. They're speaking about one person in that. The other thing with the person that they were saying used drugs, to my knowledge, it was one kid who admitted to smoking marijuana when he was a teenager. You know, which I believe now the agency hires people with marijuana in their system, as long as it's clear by the time they graduate. You could you could correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the way I understood it. And lastly, they spoke about, oh, this guy patronizing a prostitute and all this stuff. You know, from the way I understood, and this is what I said, it's 3 people they're speaking about out of 31. His story, the way I understood it, he was in the military. Him and some of his guys, they went out to a strip club. This came out. He wasn't arrested for it. It came out during during a polygraph test for another police agency, that he was going to give the stripper some money to have sexual intercourse with him. So that came out in a polygraph. Wasn't arrested. Wasn't charged. It was something that came out of polygraph. The way I understood it is the NYPD said, well, wait a minute. We don't administer polygraph exams because we found it to be inconclusive. So why will we take another agency's results when we don't accept those results here? So I believe that was why they let him through. So it was 3 people for the most part that they were speaking about out of the whole 31. But the way things are written, it would make you think it was all 31 of them.
I see. But also, wouldn't they have been investigating these people and catch this stuff anyway? Because they were supposed to catch this. And if they weren't going to let them through, that would have been the disqualifying factor, is what they're stating. Instead, they're working today. You can't go back 2 years later and start going, well, 2 years ago, I made a mistake, which is essentially what happened here. Yet, oh, by the way, we had unlicensed psychologists assess you who don't even have a license. Oh, and you gave them like HIPAA. That's like a HIPAA violation. You're telling them about personal things. I don't understand how does anybody not see that issue, that these people are like being victimized, and they're making them into the criminal here. Like, oh, well, they should never have been hired. I can't foresee that not going against the city, and the city's going to be paying through the nose with the police department for years to come.
Absolutely. And just one other point, because you said something that jogged my memory on an important point. So on the investigatory side, they use formulas for things, right? So they'll say, if you had this amount of suspensions on this amount of dates, it makes you ineligible and stuff like that. So this guy, even with the terrible driving record, on the investigatory piece, the formula they put together is technically wasn't a fail, right? So what they'll do is the psychologist will turn around and fail you for something that's investigatory. And so that's how you get that little piece right there of like, well, how did he even make it? Because technically, because there's a formula with these things, technically he didn't exceed what the formula would have been on an investigatory piece. So that's where the psych comes in and disqualifies you.
I see. All right. So I guess, I mean, we've been talking a lot about that, and there's other things to get to, because here's a question I want to ask you. Well, I was going to get to this too, is jumping in front of it. But so JDP074 asked this to you, Pat. Says, Pat, how can the Guardians maintain credibility when they honor Tim Pearson as Man of the Year despite all his issues? Now, there's a woman, also African American, Sergeant Ludeman, and John Scola represents her. And he's been on the show, and it's like, I don't know, I've lost count of how many sexual harassment lawsuits this guy has on him. Plus, he had an incident with the migrant shelters. And as you know, it is his own voice that gave us the coined phrase now, "Where's my crumbs?" which now became the Eric Adams crew is the Crumbs crew. So that is a good question. How did the Guardians name a Man of the Year, and how do you maintain credibility off of that?
No, absolutely. Listen, that's a fair question. And, and out of full transparency, listen, I have a really good relationship with Tim Pearson. One of the things that I can tell you is that from my time in the Guardians, he's been very, but in terms of the Guardian members, right? He's been influential. He's been very helpful in getting things done. He's been very insightful. Some of the things that he did mention, though, and I was looking at, I know the timeline. Some of those things kind of happened after, in all fairness, happened after he was honored. But speaking about Tim Pearson as a whole, holistically, he has a long reputation with the Guardians. Been a member since the '80s. Actually, if you go back and you look at some of the lawsuits that was filed against the city of New York, he led the charge. His name is actually listed in many of the lawsuits. And so that we kind of based a lot of our decision making based on the history, him leading the charge in many things, him being on the forefront of the lawsuits. And like I said, there's a number of lawsuits that I can pull up and I could always show you where he fought to make change back in the day. And like, some of these things, like I said, that came up, I know the timeline, like the Ludeman, a lot of these things were, and I don't know her personally, I have nothing bad to say. But some of these things came up afterwards, in all fairness.
Yeah, people saying they call him Pearson a creep. It's like he kind of dirtied himself. I got to be honest, somebody I know worked with him, was with him on 9/11 and always said, oh, he's a great guy to work for. But then when he read this stuff, he goes, oh my God, that sounds like Timmy. When the creep thing, that's what they tell me.
And if I could offer a perspective, listen, I'm not trying to change anybody's mind here on this particular thing. I've spent some considerable amount of time around him, and a lot of, he's a jokester. So something, and listen, no excuse. I'm not trying to make an excuse for anybody. But he's a jokester. Those that really know him. So some of the things that he say, I don't know if they get taken out of context, because you ever have somebody you say, oh man, you gotta watch what they may say, and so he's a big time jokester, and a lot of things I don't think is meant the way it's interpreted. That's just my opinion.
I see. I got Special Hagen said lots of those things with Pearson happened years before he was honored. Gordon wouldn't leave any woman or girls he loves around Pearson. I tell you, it's a rough crowd.
No, it's okay. Listen, it's all right.
Yeah, she goes on to say Pearson is a vile human being and a reprobate. I spent time with him. He's disgusting. I guess this be a place where we disagree. From all intents and purposes, I don't know Timmy, and
Right.
Full disclosure, if Timmy wants to come on, and I'm probably the biggest critic of his, the floor will be his, and we could go back and forth with this. But I think out of the whole Crumbs crew, out of all those guys, and there's so many of them, Timmy's got to be the 1A as probably the worst guy on the whole thing. From the migrant shelter thing, I mean, I'm going to separate the man on the job versus what he has done personally, because I told you on 9/11 he was a hero. People don't really talk about that. He was a hero that day. He was in the building. I know the whole story with him. He did great that day, but that doesn't excuse. We can't use that to excuse all this other stuff that is going on. And you have victims here. There's chiefs. There's other people involved. And their careers were destroyed because Timmy had to pull. I never saw a police department that has an advisor to the mayor essentially telling Miguel Iglesias, who's in charge of internal affairs, what to do. He also had meetings unscheduled. He just shows up. This is very like rare air in a police department to see this. So I think that's what everyone has a problems, but definitely Timmy could come on, but that's a place I would disagree. I think he's actually probably the worst guy of the Crumbs crew as far as the members, the table of success, whatever Eric Adams he coined his club of cronies. So
I'm sorry. So no, I'm sorry. Finish it. I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
No, yeah, I was gonna say, listen, I can't, offer a defense because many things I wasn't privy to, but I would definitely listen. I would definitely, recommend you him coming on. Like you said, it may be areas you may be like, listen, I'm not buying this, but there's something that I would definitely recommend, like him coming on, and some things he may can talk about, some things he may can't talk about.
Obviously,
if there's like litigation pending, but something I would certainly recommend, in my opinion.
Yeah, just because a lot of people, I mean, it's like, I've been on him for a while with things, and that's just the nature of what's going on. Is people are very concerned, and also the victims, like Gabby Wall's one of his victims. So I'm going to get to her in a second, but Ulysses Laguerre here says, Sal, can you ask Patrick, has he contacted the people who were disqualified from psychological process?
Great question. So one of the things that we did is we put out a survey, and we had some lists, exam, name, contact information, a place where they could put their disqualification letters, so we could see who their psych doctors were. And last I checked, we had about 260 something people who submitted these surveys. I went through a number of them, and we were able to match them to the list of who on the city and the state site actually. The state, this is all public information, by the way. They provide a list of who has license and who doesn't, and we were able to match some of the psychologists' names to the notices that we received from people, and there was a good number of them that were they didn't have a license at the time. This one didn't have. So I kind of look at it as like the fruits of the poisonous tree thing. I don't know if it'll still be applicable. Like I don't even know how if the city can stand by these disqualifications when the person administering the interview shouldn't have even been administering the interview. That is my opinion on it.
I see. Well, I hope that answers the question, because I saw that a few times in there. And again, the psychological thing is a work in progress, how it's being handled. Because again, the city has no response to any of this stuff. They mention an exemption. It doesn't exist. And that's it. They're all tight-lipped. And I think it's one of the few times I understand they had meetings. They can't debunk this. They don't have an answer. They're not smug. Usually have that smug, all these lawyers there in the legal department. They don't have an answer for this. So there is a day of reckoning coming. The only thing is I just hope that, I know you're on top of this. So, and people can still reach out to you, right? Any member.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially, I advise people too, especially any member of the Guardians, go to Pat with this, because it's going to be I think it's a class action suit.
Oh, it certainly is. We have, like I said, we have a very big law firm. Like I said, I told you just in like the last 3 years, I'm aware that they either disqualified or discontinued at least 6,000 people for psych-related, for psych. And we have records that go back to 2012. I know in the last 10 years or so, the police department had to hire over 25, 30,000 people, but we all know that there's more people disqualified than actually hired. So the pool out there is very large. I believe they're going to be putting things out to reach people in masses, but just from social media alone, we got like 260 something people. And there was a number of people who they would send me inbox messages on Instagram. I got so many messages on Instagram. I'm sorry to those who I couldn't respond to, because there's just so many, and everybody tells me these long stories. It might be hundreds of those of people who didn't submit to do the survey. So there's a large pool out there.
Yeah. So that's the thing. So if people want, you definitely reach out to Pat or you could call Eric Sanders to represent you. I know Mr. Scola's also got something going on. He's just been tight-lipped about it because
Yeah.
this has affected many people. So again, I think this is going to be the record. This is going to break the back of the police department in the city as far as when this all comes out. It's just there's more details trickling as we go every day. So if you were affected, please contact Pat. Especially if you're a member of the Guardians or you're being neglected by the union. That's another thing too. Sometimes the union, as you know, doesn't really back people, like I've been saying. John Doe 3, $9.99 to the Sal Greco show. I'm going to be completely dehydrated from all the caffeine later. When it pertains to false allegations and you have enough evidence to prove otherwise, why are some people's process prolonged, and would it be on someone's record after being disproved?
You know, John, that's something that we've been dealing with now. I think it's something that we spoke about. I know you guys seen, I've been speaking out about it. One of the things that we've seen recently was a ton of allegations. You know, a lot of them were anonymous, being, flagged. I was in a conversation about this earlier today as well. These false allegations, I mean, like, I don't know if you want me to go here already or not, Sal. I'm just trying to follow your lead on this.
Yeah.
But like, I spoke out about the Inspector Faison thing.
Yes.
And there were tons of allegations, tons. Some people say, oh man, he's downplaying, and he's saying these are serious things. But when they actually had the actual GO or interview or whatever, many of those things were debunked, right? Like they were, and they walked out of there with agreements on 2 charges, which had nothing to do with any of that stuff that was listed. They were, in my opinion, some people may say that something had to do with like a conflict of interest because of a picture that was taken, but it was like had nothing to do with all the stuff that was in the paper. Right? Everything in the paper was addressed, or every allegation was addressed, and it was shown, or it was pointed out where, uh, that allegation, this was something that kind of addressed it. And so these things are serious. A number of allegations have been coming out, and I'm just hoping that the department, it seems like now they're taking a more measured step in response, which is good, because we have to realize that sometimes people drop these logs just because they don't like people for a number of reasons, right? I was in charge of this. Somebody else moved in. They taken my overtime. They took my spot. They took my tour. So these things start flying around, and I think we can't overreact when we get them. We just got to we got to take it in strides and look at it and see, okay, what is this? What is the legitimacy? What's the reason for this complaint? And we go from there.
I see people still. I mean, Jack Ghost 117 says, I don't get why the department does not use real cops to do the psych. I feel like the doctors can really be biased against you. Jack, they're not licensed psychologists. Forget about it. There are no 55 out of 74 had no license. So you're not even supposed to be evaluated by someone, because in the article itself, I had an assistant commissioner, nice guy, he knew Eric Sanders, but he said he was making arbitrary decisions on people. But who are you to do that? It's supposed to be a psychological test that, and a survey and all this, and you have people that are not licensed doing it. I mean, that's just on its face alone. You go, that didn't happen, did it? But it did. It did. But to go back to the Winston Faison incident. Now, full disclosure, I also know Winston. I work with him. Very nice guy. I did mention that one incident when his brother got arrested and he had him in the office, which was very bizarre, very weird incident. But other than that, nice, always nice to the guys around him. All right, that's how I know him. But now, when he went to aviation, you saw that the article is written to make him look like he's incompetent. Enter Deputy Chief Richard Taylor. And this guy's a polarizing figure. He acts like he's the Jewish community guru when he's anything but, because many in the Jewish community can't stand him. He's involved in a series of investigations. And I mean, one where I could tell you, he went to a polling location on election night, shows up with a gun on him, that's a felony. You can't do that. And that's what this discipline was for, where he should have clearly lost his job. Okay. very recently, there's other allegations of him. He was going to some female's house with a car, and the driver from community affairs is with him. He's not in uniform, but he's working. He's got other things like now the aviation incident where he authorized flyovers of, I believe, his daughter's party. Was now, that's $8,000 a turn for that. And Faison denied this as the head of the aviation group, but it went to the special operations chief. He got around Faison. So I was like, Faison's sitting there, but I don't think Faison's approving all of this. I could tell you, I know Eric Adams took numerous flights on an aviation. I don't think Faison, I mean, what's he going to say? No to the mayor who could just do what the hell he wants? Or someone has to approve that. But they end arounding Faison. And then finally, I'm hearing that Jessica Tisch flies around in that helicopter. So again, it's like you're making Faison this scapegoat. He did all these things with aviation, but I could tell you, and I know Richie Taylor's daughter works in the mayor's office, so I don't know if that's another factor in all of this. And very recently, just to say, I know something else that happened. Lieutenant Jablonski, who was a Brooklyn South community affairs guy for many years, was transferred to 2-5 precinct. And I know it's being alleged that Richie Taylor did something where he went to his house and like took a picture of his car and all kinds of stuff. So now that guy can't retire even if he wanted to. And it's like all this Richie Taylor's going crazy, but he seemed to a guy in the middle of this aviation thing. His name's not even being mentioned. And these allegations you mentioned about Faison really pertain to, well, Richie Taylor is doing the same thing. That whatever they claim Faison did, he did. So why is he not being treated the same way? Why isn't he being brought into a GO15, being investigated by Group 1? Why is it Faison only being investigated?
So no, listen, I mean, good point on a lot of that. And some of the questions, a lot of my members asked that I don't know where the department is with this. I can't say for certain that he hasn't been GO'd a question because I honestly don't know the answer to that. One of the things that a lot of my members have been concerned about is the exploitation. I know the department is going to say, hey, we have no control over that, right? Like, one of the things we saw was like some of the issues with the executives of color, they made the paper immediately, right? And there was so much noise. And then we see some of the other things don't make the paper, or there's not like transfers and stuff. So, the part of that I can definitely speak to is how my members feel. And I've been vocal about this. I've had this conversation to the powers that be. Listen, this is how my members feel. And it may be a number of reasons why these things are happening, but a lot of my members were concerned, like, hey, we noticed the thing with Anderson, Faison, Henderson, all these things made the paper, and it's kind of like an exploitation. And the department say, well, we don't control the paper, so that's their response to it. So we don't know if somebody from the department is leaking it, or the papers are just grabbing it. I can tell you, which was very disappointing, and I'm still disappointed even telling this. There was some investigations that pertain that were done with some of these executives that we've been recently discussing, where the day after the GO, people who were GO said that the things that they said in their GO the day before was in the paper the next day. So like, if there's not a leak, then, so that something like that would be disturbing, and so those are things that my members are upset about. Like I said, I know the department's going to say, well, they can't control what the paper puts in there, but if information that's supposed to be confidential is making it, that's a concern.
Yeah. So wait, Hard X Core says, so now everyone's a scapegoat. That's the finest unfiltered opinion now. No, what I'm saying is Faison has been alleged to do things, right? He got questioned, right? They say he destroyed a helicopter, whatever. And Pat just told you that was dismissed. That's not the case. So, but he's being dragged for all these things at aviation, where we know now this Chief Taylor had a flyover of a helicopter over a party of his daughter. I mean, it's alleged, but I mean, it's evidence. I mean, Eric Sanders basically said it happened, and there is nothing going on with that. So he's being treated differently because He asked Faison and he said no, but he still got the flyover. So you realize that the mechanisms there, hardcore, are not what you think. So what I'm trying to say is if discipline isn't fair, it's arbitrary. You can't make Faison into this evil guy, and then you have somebody who did something was just as worse, just the same, if not worse, and we're leaving him alone. Meanwhile, he's got a ton of other things going on the side that I've brought up here numerous times. He's not being the standard is supposed to be equal for all. Is it really equal? No. There's friends of Eric Adams, and then there's the regular everyone else, general population, as Eric Dim likes to coin, right? And that's what I'm pointing out. Listen, did Faison, you're saying Faison falsified records or impeding federal investigation. Do you know anything about that, Pat?
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know some of these things extensively. From my understanding of it, I believe that there was someone who worked there with Faison. They had disagreements in his management style and some changes that he made that affected somebody's overtime or how many hours that they got based on flight. This person left the unit and went to the FAA, and that's when all this stuff came down. So a lot of more of this appears to be personal than really job. Listen, if you see substantial risks or concerns, you should definitely blow the whistle. But I think a lot more of this turned out to be more personal allegations because of personal differences than anything professional.
That's what I'm leaning towards. I mean, Eric Sanders said no hard X score to both questions. So Eric's answering the question for it. That both those allegations are not true from that Faison did that stuff. And I'm saying he's been put through the mud and through the ringer, but yet Richie Taylor never has. Yet Taylor's, the same behavior. Yet why are we just ignoring one and ostracizing the other? That's the stuff I don't like. And you know why? I'm a victim of that hard X score. And that's something I could get to you too as well. Criminal association, right? We had Corey Pegues on. People made a lot of opinions about him over time, right? All these things that allegedly happened. Doug Life, a tattoo that he doesn't even have on his neck. But I understand he at one point, and he admits to this stuff. He was a member of the Supreme Team, right? And then he went to the military, came back, and became a police officer. Never had, we'll say, what they alleged him to be, Supreme Team, whatever. He wasn't involved in the murder of Byrne that day in Queens. Although the Supreme Team had a hand in it. Of course, we don't want to idolize those people either. And I think that's what people get misconstrued because he talks about it. I saw Tim Pearson on a documentary talking about it too. It doesn't look good. I mean, Eric Adams too, idolizing these guys. That's never good, but that's neither here and there because they were on the job. They did 20 plus years, all three of them. So what are you going to do? You can look back at their career, say they're good or not. But Corey Pegues said something interesting when he was on Finance Unfiltered a couple of weeks ago with John and Eric. He said he's in a bar. He shakes a hand with a guy, or he doesn't know that the guy is a criminal. He has a record, right? So criminal association, they investigate him for nonsense. He doesn't know the guy. He just goes to a bar, and the guy happens to be there, not knowing somebody called on him, right? But we go now into further stuff, right? Because he says, unless you're involved in criminal activity, that is when you should be, this should be taken serious, criminal association, meaning criminal association in furtherance of a crime, meaning you're friends with someone who's a criminal and then you guys commit something, some kind of crime together, or you know about a crime, or you're covering for him, or you're running names for him in a computer. Not, I know someone, he was arrested a while ago, but we got to destroy your career now because you knew this guy. Oh, but our friends do it too, but we're not going to go into it. And what I'm getting to is I was terminated from the police department because they said I was friends with Roger Stone, a guy who was convicted for lying to Congress, yet he was pardoned, okay, by the president, who himself was a convicted felon. Oh, we'll get to that a little bit also. But Roger was they're saying he's a criminal. I was uncompensated security, a made-up term. I mean, Pat, you walk down the street, they could say you're someone's uncompensated security because you're carrying your gun with you. I mean, that's what they were trying to say with me because I never got paid for anything. I never was the guy's security. And someone else that was arrested 10 years or 15 years ago or something that I didn't even really know about. And then they've never committed crime ever since. And then they went into a bunch of stuff in my investigation. They were using illegal subpoenas, these administrative subpoenas, They were browbeating the Willard Hotel staff to get the footage. It's kind of crazy stuff, right? But they don't apply this equally. And why? Because then, I hate to mention this, but, the guy who runs the Hispanic Society, Joey Ayala, Eddie Caban, the former police commissioner, people that are now still there, the John Shells, the Tanya Kinsellas, Jeffrey Madries, all these people, executives, were hanging out at this nightclub, Con Sofrito in the Bronx, with a known mob associate, and he admits to his criminality, Jimmy Rodriguez, right? They stand there every other day having parties nonstop. I mean, Victoria Perry, she's part of NOLA. She's sitting around with this guy. Juanita Holmes, she's sitting around with this guy. Everybody's sitting around with this guy. They're all executives. Martine Monterrasso, okay, I run the police academy. She's sitting there partying with this. There he is on screen, right? Him, Carl Hasty, another corrupt guy, and Eric Adams. Martine Monterrasso, who started the police academy thing with Quatisha Epps' nephew, Andino, that kickstarted the whole unlicensed psychologist investigation, right? He's hanging out with the guy. So why is it that you're treating this criminal association thing, which is used arbitrarily to destroy careers? Because how is it that I'm terminated, but all these people I mentioned have not been for the same exact thing? Is using Paul Gamble's words, this is conduct unbecoming of a police officer. I must be terminated because Roger Stone's my friend. How is it all these people aren't terminated, Pat?
Yeah, you know what, Sal, and we've spoken about this. Like I said, I'm probably one of the only people that didn't know that guy. But to your point, and I wholeheartedly stand behind this statement. Like, based on what I know of your situation, is totally unfair. And I don't even think that I was talking to some people. I'm going to do some research just to make sure I'm saying the right thing. I don't think that they use that criminal association really anymore, because you have people who have relatives and this and that, right? Like, you have a sibling, a parent. Um, and I've said this to you before. Like, it's one thing if you guys are in the back chopping up drugs, doing a drug deal, something like what they discuss in that scenario. I feel like, in my opinion, is overreach, and I believe you're going to be victorious at the ending, because this is overreach. It kind of goes back to like the silencing movement, right? Like, you don't agree with something or whatever, you silence it, you ice it out altogether. And that's something, even if I don't agree with it, even if I don't agree with the person's values or, the political, I think it's wrong to use your power to punish somebody because you don't agree with somebody that they're around politically. So, I wholeheartedly support you in that. And it's the same thing. Honestly, it's the same thing going on with the 69 people, who were asked to leave because of the COVID vaccines, right? I'll be honest. I'll be one of the first. I did not want to take that at all, right? Like, I think I actually took the one shot one, because that's how opposed to it I was. I was like, I need my job, blah blah blah. But there was some political standing behind that, I believe, in my opinion, right? If I'm speaking honestly. And I think that, people got on two sides, opposed to really looking at this like, hey, do people really feel strongly about this? Do they have a religious reason why maybe in their religion they can't take shots? I think a lot of that was pushed out the window. It was like, if you don't take this, you have this political belief and it differs from mine. And I believe that could have been the case in many of these circumstances, which is why I hope that, these people that's impacted continue to fight. The city's not going to make it easy because they know it's going to cost them money.
Mm-hmm.
But same thing in your situation. In my opinion, I think if you were there with somebody else that people on one side of the aisle may have had closer political ideologies with, they wouldn't have mind so much about their history. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I also want to state that Keyshawn Sewell was the police commissioner at the time. She was with Jimmy Rodriguez herself. She terminated me, allegedly. She signed. How does that work? And it's not just Jimmy here, Pat, just to say the restaurant itself was involved in all kinds of shenanigans, right? And there was also a nightclub extortion racket that emanated from there, right? I don't know how they justify doing what they did, and they continue fighting me. And then Eric Adams himself, back in January in D.C., is pictured with Roger Stone. He's with Roger. But yet he terminated me for this. Okay? I don't understand why he hasn't called my lawyer and said, I've been a thorn on this guy's side because of his own, I don't know, arrogance. He knows this is wrong. He was victimized himself with it. They said he associated with Mike Tyson, who's a convicted felon. He actually did a real bodyguard work for him. He's a Louis Farrakhan guy. That's another radical, another guy who would be considered one of those organizations. That's another criminal association clause. The guy is, he was actually investigated for this stuff. He knows the deal, yet he just let them run amok with this stuff. And to Eric Sanders' point in here, he had said he did show this in the deposition, the new policy that's in the administrative guide to one of the defendants, which is Daniel Cutter, who's a lieutenant in internal affairs, a real winner in my opinion. But he showed him, and yet his answer was, Pat, you're in a picture. So I'm in a picture with Roger. That's enough to investigate me. But you're in a picture with Roger per se. Well, you need to, or you're in a picture with Jimmy or something. Well, that's not enough. We need a little bit more. We got to look into it. We didn't have to look into it with me. So you see,
it's different standards. It's different standards. Yeah, no, you know what's I support you wholeheartedly on that. And like I said, I definitely think that you guys should continue fighting that because it's different standards. And one of the other things I'll point out, just because I know how these things work, so often you'll have leadership who have one opinion. I'm not saying that's the case here, but a lot of times they may agree with certain things, but the bureaucracy level, there's so many attorneys involved and in the middle. And so sometimes you want to do things and, you can't. It's the same thing that happens even in this police department, right? Like, it sucks sometimes for some of these bosses, even up to the commissioners, right? They tell them like, hey, we want you to make the greatest cheese known to man. But they give them the recipes for for making like a cake. Has nothing to do with cheese, right? They don't let you pick your chief of department sometimes. They don't let you pick this. They don't let you pick that. They want you to have like a dynamic, they want you to prove all these things and be successful and show success. But, you say, well, can I have this? Nope. Can I have that? Nope. Can I move this person? Nope. Can I bring that person? Nope. So you see these things so often, right? So sometimes what you see forward facing doesn't really match how people feel, but the level of bureaucracy is so enormous that you get these results.
Yeah, and then to point this one out, John Shell, who's the chief of department, okay, and he has all these issues with me. He wrote something online, which is it's gonna boomerang on him. Trust me. John Shell went to a golf outing with Kaz Daughtry, and guess who he was with? And he was President Trump, who I believe is a convicted felon, and he wasn't on duty. So off duty, you went to go see a convicted felon. So why isn't John Shell being treated the same way Sal Greco is being treated? See, all of this is going to get addressed in the court. I know with Paul Gamble, they're able to pull all the strings. There's a picture. You do. I mean, the NYPD, does this policy, does this exist, or does it only apply to Sal Greco? Because that's what it seems like. And this is Eric Adams' problem. He has to answer. I know he's scared of Eric Sanders. I know that, but it's going to happen. You know what I mean? It's just, I want people to know, because there's people today that are being targeted under the same circumstances. Corey Pegues even wrote it out. And I think this procedure needs to be wiped clean, with the only thing should be if you associate with someone in commission of a crime. And remember, Consofrito had reports of human trafficking and all this stuff. So a lot of those people, you could say, yeah, there were crimes going on there, and we don't know because nobody ever got investigated or asked about anything. But clearly something was going on over there, and everyone just turned a blind eye. They're too busy singing with Fat Joe, another felon in the corner.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with you with that, in commission of a crime. Like I said, to me, this whole situation is totally bullshit. But you could tell it's more political than anything, and this is why I wholeheartedly believe you're going to be victorious in this. I mean, it sucks that somebody has to, because it sucks that you have to go through all of this to and all this fighting, because it's time, it's money. There's a lot of loss. I hope you take a note and keep in tabs of how much loss of wages and everything,
Yeah.
But I ultimately, like on the surface, on the face, I think you're going to be victorious, because it's clearly political.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people would agree with that sentiment. I'm trying to avoid other people having to deal with the same problem, only because, I'm like the measuring stick with that now. in the police department. And I've seen other people recently, one in particular, that John Scola has this case of a female. She was a detective, and they put her through the mud. And again, the New York Post seems to be where a hit piece, and she got fired for criminal association when she's a domestic violence. She was a survivor of domestic violence. They didn't care. They just said, and it was recent. It was soccer mom Tish that actually terminated her. So it still goes on to this day, and they don't. I just don't. I think it's it just boils my blood, because you could be someone like me with all these awards. I'm out there arresting people. I'm nothing on my record, and then I don't like that you picture with this guy, so we got to destroy you. Someone there makes a decision, and nobody wants to fess up to it. They go, we're going to go after this guy, kind of like the drug screening, kind of like the psychological assessments. Same thing always, right? They're weaponizing the system for themselves, or because they're power, or whatever it is, but they weaponize this system for their own self-interest. And that's what I'm trying to point out and avoid.
And you know what? And this is so important, and I think we all should be joining in this fight. And I want to talk to you more on the side about it to see how I could be supportive in this fight. Because here's the thing: today is you because they don't like who you're associated with, but tomorrow it could be any one of us. Like, oh, you were, you were. I have people try to call me even about coming on here. Like, oh, you're gonna go on here with those guys. I'm like, yeah, like we don't agree on everything, but that, yeah, I'm gonna go up there. He's got, and so today it's like they didn't like who you were associated with. Tomorrow it could be me or anybody else. So that's why I believe that we all should join in this fight. And it should be like these things should be credible. Just the mere you were in the picture with him, you connected to him is not enough, in my opinion.
It's crazy. I mean, it is the department does an investigation on you, and then they say, you and Roger and anyone else, we said you've committed no crimes. It was not, you didn't do anything. We don't like that guy. And by the way, Eric Sanders is writing to you. If Pat catches hell, he can look me up to quiet the clowns.
Oh, Eric, I'm going to take you up on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, the reality is that we gotta be able to hold people accountable. Now, we spoke about that earlier. The department might not like it, but if we're pointing things out, listen, grab it. If they're listening, I'm sure they are. If they're listening, if we're pointing things out, it would behoove them to start taking looks into it. They might have a justification in some cases. Some cases they might not be aware. So this is that the NYPD is a huge agency. There's a lot going on that sometimes even the CO of a unit don't even know about. More or less the higher ups. So if things are being pointed out here, and this might be an opportunity to say, hey, let's look to see, can we do things better? And Sal, I'll be the first to say, there's been things you guys have pointed out, and we've seen some type of changes come about because like somebody looks at, oh shit, we might not have known this was going on. So it's just a keep being the voice, keep these podcasts going, keep getting people on here because you guys really do make a difference, so it's important.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I'm trying. I'm trying because I personally think in that whole situation that there's also that beef between Eric Adams and Eric Sanders, because one being the president of the Guardians that he wanted to be, the other being 100 blacks in law enforcement that really there were like only 15 people, and they clashed because he didn't like Eric being the head, and that's what there's like a beef that stems from 30-something years ago, and I think that's one of the reasons why. He just doesn't do the right thing. I don't know if Eric Adams is capable of doing the right thing, but he doesn't want to do the right thing here where he knows you can't win. This is a no-win situation for you. You're caught red-handed with all this stuff. Other than doing the right thing, what's left? Because, I don't know, he's got to look at himself in the mirror. He's got all kinds of issues. I mean, Eric Sanders said, LOL, Eric knows how to reach me. He clearly doesn't want to, though. He's got a problem. He can't pick up the phone, right? There's one other thing before, we wrap this up with you. The Gabby Walls thing. Now, to bring this all around, right? Gabby Walls, full disclosure, I know her well. She's a captain in the 114th precinct. I was a rookie when Gabby Walls was a sergeant, along with Juanita Holmes, by the way, in the 71st precinct. She was excellent as a supervisor. When you talk about someone that cops want to go to, she had the cops' backs at all times. She would stay late. She would sign vouchers. She would go out and put her hands and handcuff people. That's the Gabby Walls I know. Kenny Walls, her husband, I work with him personally. Great guy, Kenny. Her family, great people. I even know her daughter, who happened to also be involved in a case where they're being targeted. So just so you know, her lawsuit against the police department is Scott Henderson, the deputy chief, of course, friends of Jeffrey Maddrey, who has his own issues. But Scott Henderson and Jeffrey Maddrey were alleged to have been chasing Gabby around in the precinct like a rabbit, right? She was hiding from them. You know, you have Kaz Dordry involved in that also. So you have major people involved in her situation. Tim Pearson also involved with Gabby. So Gabby's promoted. She's all the way to captain, right? Now she can't get promoted. No more, no command for her. 3 years plus sitting in the 114 precinct. They don't want to, promote her, obviously. And we assume the only thing you think of is because of this, because what they were texting her and telling her to do was very, we're just going to say it's not for the public eye. It's more like an X-rated thing, right? What they were trying to do. Then we have her own daughter, same situation. She's in the 9-4. She gets promoted. Her daughter, very active, by the way, arrests a lot of people. She doesn't have anything negative on her record, but some detective she worked with was trying to, sexually harass her. And then the delegates, once again, the DA and the union did not have her back, told her, don't do this. And it basically just try to shove this under her rug and act like, oh, just work with the guy. You know him, and you poo-poo the whole thing. So now Jasmine Walls had to sue, but again, the way she's been treated in Brooklyn North and everything, Scott Henderson was the chief there. You could correlate it's because of her mom. They know who her mom is. So they're punishing her, Gabby, and her daughter, Jasmine. Enter Berkeley Van Tol. He's the CO of the 106. He's a captain. There's reports from that community. They don't have enough staff there. They're patrolling, and I understand how NYPD is. We both. You're on the job now. I was on the job. There's only one car, 2 cops patrolling all midnight, which is dangerous. It's dangerous, okay? But he has no staff running around there. There are jobs on the hook there that go from the morning all the way to night. They don't get answered, or night to morning, because they don't have a staff there, right? Anything can happen. So he also has crime fudging allegations. There was an incident that happened in a command. There was catalytic converters taken from cars. They ID'd these perps. They had the pictures of the cars on video, and then they went back to actually downgrade these crimes. So Berkeley Van Tol, who was a captain, then gets promoted to deputy inspector for all this Michigas. He refuses to call the borough because he came through with Chief Williams, another guy that had to resign because he was under investigation with this crew. And bottom line is the guy's a boob. He's incompetent. He's a deputy inspector. And very recently, Kaz and Shell were going to go to this command to see him, and the guy ran away. It was like 8 minutes. He was gone. He doesn't even want to talk to these guys. The guy now is a posting in the bulletin board, on the bulletin NYPD, from the chief of department. They're looking for a new CO for this place because he needs to go. Why isn't Gabby Walls being considered for that? And since her union abandons her, then maybe Gabby Walls, I think the Guardians could step in and say, listen, Gabby Walls needs to get promoted. There's a perfect opportunity since there's a problem with the community. This guy's clearly a boob and they don't like him and he's incompetent. Then why is he still there? And we don't promote Gabby Walls to put in that position, which would be perfect. She's a perfect solution.
No, absolutely, Sal. So there's a lot to unpack there. But just for starters, I know Gabby Walls personally. I know a number of members of her family personally, and I've always had a great relationship with her. And I don't want to call it the exact relationship of the family members because I don't want to put them on the spot. I know some of them might want to kind of stay, behind the scenes. But from my personal relationship with her, I think she's outstanding. She's an amazing executive. Very bright person. Like I said, I really don't know much about what transpired because much of these things happen in an area where there's not many people who really know. Like I said, if you had access to see actual text messages, you might have an advantage over other people. But if I can just speak about Gabby, I know her, and I think she's an amazing executive. Again, like I said, I really don't know much of the details, because there's tons of things going on. I haven't really seen some of the things you might have seen. But if those things did transpire, that they should not have, for starters. And she does deserve, to be treated fairly and to receive. I don't know if she is interested in putting in for the 106 or any other command. Usually there's a start by building community relationships. And I would wholeheartedly be willing, if there's a command that I have relationships with the community, I'll be willing to, reach out to community leaders, introduce her to community leaders that can help her propel forward if a command that she's interested opens in and I have relationships there.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for Gabby, who I know, and she's an excellent supervisor. And whether she even talks to me or not, I'm gonna advocate for, only because I know her personally, I know her family, I knew her daughter, I know her husband, I work with her husband. These are great people that she could definitely be a commanding officer. The answer is, why not Gabby? And especially where there's a little bit, when you say, remember that thing when you were telling Eric, we don't promote enough black executives. Why isn't she getting promoted? What is the delay in promoting her, other than, she rebuked Madry, Henderson, and Pearson, so then we're going to punish her. That's what everyone is. That's what it appears like, and that's what everyone's saying.
Yeah, no, well, listen, perception, like we say, perception is reality, right? So, like, if people see, if there's enough, people seeing things a certain way because of certain things out there. So that's always a challenge when you're trying to address perception. And, only people will really know the truth of some of these things are people that was actually there, or like you said, in your case, if you actually got a chance to see something, is more than what most people have. But yeah, no, listen, when it comes to Gabby, like I said, know her personally. We always had a really good relationship, and I'm willing to support her any way that she needs.
Yeah, that definitely she needs to get support, because it's mind numbing to think that she has not been promoted yet. It's ridiculous. And her daughter being ostracized for even reporting that she's being sexually harassed. Like, you got to be quiet, because, and the union this is a disgraceful thing that the DA does. But hey, they just endorsed Eric Adams. So, they're in bed with that's what I'm saying. That people need to go to you. They can't go because they're in bed with the enemy, essentially. Whatever the mayor wants, they're with for you. You know what I mean? It's not right. And the members, this woman's being sexually harassed, but you got to stay quiet, because the union.
It goes back to what we talked about earlier, Sal. Like, there's so many people they're looking for what's next. So nobody wants to shake the tree. Nobody wants to piss anybody off. Listen, it's everybody, unions, fraternals. People are like, let's just do this much so that we don't, because in most cases, most people are in a pretty good space and they don't want to, they don't want to mess that up. I'm here to tell you, like, and I've said this to my members, I said, I'm not looking for anything. I'll say it again. I know there's people from the department watching. I'm not looking for anything, right? So, there's not, I'm not worried about myself, because I'm more like, I would rather my members benefit, well, not benefit. I'd rather them be treated fairly, even if it costs me, than to stay silent. And, I'm in this office, I might get this promotion. Listen, I live within my means. I make enough to survive. If they offer me special assignment, I wouldn't turn it down, but I'm not looking for it. I'm not going to say I'm not going to speak up because it may cost me special assignment. I'm not going to say I'm not going to speak up because it may cost me a position. Like, I'm not worried. I'm not afraid of patrol or any of these other units. I've done it, not afraid of it. And this is why I'm comfortable in speaking up. This is why I'm comfortable coming here and having these conversations with you. Like I said, if I told you how many people call me, text me like, you're going to go in there, the department's going to be watching. I'm like, listen, I'm not going to say anything other than the truth, right? And, I just got to make sure I say it respectfully and stuff like that. And then I'm not saying anything derogatory or something that's a hate speech or whatever like that. That wouldn't be the intention. But to have an honest conversation with you guys, listen, you guys are like former cops, right? Like, you guys run an honest, legit podcast. And even if we don't agree on things, and I'm here to tell you, like, I listen to some of your stuff, I agree with you guys more often than you think. I think I probably agree with you guys like 70 to 75% of the time. And I think, like I said, we say things, and I've said this to you twice, and I'm going to clarify what I mean when I say that. Sometimes we say the same things, we just say it differently, right? Like, I don't think that we should be promoting people of color just simply because they're a person of color over somebody who's a qualified white man or another group, right? I'm not in agreement with that. What I do advocate for is, people who have equal qualifications receive equal opportunities. That's what I'm in agreement for. So I would never ever say like put this person in there, because guess what? I got to deal with them. They could get somebody hurt or killed if they're not qualified and they're making poor decisions. So a lot of times we say the same thing, we just use different language, but we really have the same meanings, And it even goes back to when when we look at, they say, oh, Eric, or I don't know if Madry did as much, but some people that were in this prior regime or worked for the mayor, but they're now going. So they promoted a whole bunch of this or that or whatever, right? So everybody's really saying the same thing. We just kind of saying it differently. Everybody at the end of the day wants an equal opportunity to compete.
Exactly. And you just want to make it a fair assessments. Everyone has a level playing field. I don't see that and I think it's not just as much as, I'm on Eric Adams and, we've been on as a network with Eric Adams. It goes back further. It goes back. This could go past the Giuliani era, which is the 90s. This has been going on. It's a systematic problem that there isn't a level playing field and the way they act about certain things. And I understand right now people in the comments, I know what they're trying to get at. The scale seems to be tipped in a different direction right now because of who's in charge. But about 30 years ago, the scales were tipped in a different direction because of who was in charge then. I am saying I want the scale even. That's all I'm asking for. We should all be even. That's the key, especially on this job, But I guess there was one thing or two, if you could address the whole Epps thing with Madry, because also that affected the overtime thing. And she was another person ostracized immediately in the paper, right? And then the LBA, her union, nobody was there for her other than Eric Sanders. And then I came out saying, what the hell? Because in the beginning, you read this and go, wait, did that really happen? Then you start hearing the facts and go, oh my God. And then, she got modified. She got suspended. Madry only got modified, yet all these different people, they're making it all about Paul Saraceno as the fall guy yet again. This one guy approved all this over. It can't be. It can only have been Madry and everyone higher up. You have Kinsella, Tiny Kinsellas might be involved in this. They're going to get named and stuff, but what's your take or the Guardian supporting Quatisha Epps, who's been ostracized for just telling her truth? She didn't sign. She can't approve her own overtime. And this has affected so many people that are working today that are still, up in arms because you can't work overtime in the street. They look at you and they criticize, oh, you put in for 5 minutes, but they weren't, doing this crazy stuff that this guy is alleged to have done and what he was asking to do. And then he extorted her on top of it. I mean, it's just like, it reads like a movie script and you're like, but it's real. But are you supporting her in any way, or has she reached out to the Guardians? Because she was another person that's abandoned, by the union.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So one of the things I make not afraid to say, I worked with Quatisha Epps for a while actually, and many of these things were kind of very shocking and surprising to me when I was just as surprised as everybody else when they heard or saw some of the allegations. Love Quatisha Epps. She's always been like a big sister to me, and that never changed. I still communicate with her. It's not a secret. And my thought on this whole thing is like, we've had number ones make this list for many, many years. So I was just so surprised that all of a sudden, I mean, listen, it's a big to do. I know that, we're looking at city money. We're trying to figure out how to save the city money and blah, blah, blah. But, you just see the difference. It goes back to like what I said about exploitation. You see the difference in response, and so with some of these news stories, but I wish her all the best, and she knows that there's any way she was actually speaking of the Guardians, she was one of my board members. She was on my executive board. And so the support and love never changed. And I wish her all the best in this process. I know it's not easy. And I know she's going to keep, kind of pushing through. And, and we're always here to support her in any way that her or her family that she needs.
Yeah, especially her nephew too, who's also has his lawsuit, by the way, and how he was terminated. And there's Eric Sanders chiming in and said, and she worked all the damn time. That is true, by the way. She actually has overtime that she never got paid for. Those people don't even know the facts of what's going on with this case. Her nephew was also targeted the same way. Gabby Walls's daughter is being targeted because of next of kin. So he was in the police academy and they went after him specifically because of his mom. There were videos and pictures shown to him. He was getting picked on. And then the answer to the police department was to suspend him, give him a dole test. We don't even know why. And the person that did that, the chief of the police academy, is Jimmy Rodriguez's buddy hanging out with criminals up there in the Bronx. And no one's going to investigate. And it led to this whole psychological thing. So I would hope if you're defending Quatisha, you should also defend her nephew who got terminated. And this is BS the way they did him in, because, again, it's all personal. And you're weaponizing the job and the system to fix your, to make, I don't know what it is, personal beef. This is an EEO opportunity, it's an equal opportunity job. You don't do that here. You do that with your personal company. You don't do that here, man. I don't know. I just see it that way. She needs help, and I would hope the Guardians can help her, or Gabby, or any of these people that are being, basically ostracized and humiliated behind the scenes or even in public by these monsters that are controlling things. I don't understand why, the ends justify the means with them, but they need help, Pat. That's what I'm trying to get at.
No. And you know what, Sal? Thank you for pointing that out. And I've seen in many cases where you spoke about Gabby and Q, and so it's definitely making a difference. The more you put it out there, the more people. I know there's a lot of people tuned in on here, but I can tell you, Quatisha much more so, because I've had more of a working relationship and a closer relationship with her than Gabby. But I do have a really good relationship. I do like Gabby. We never had a close relationship where I would call up for any other reasons. But Quatisha's most certainly, I believe that we've done a great amount to support her, and I'll continue to do that, and I'll continue to communicate with her to figure out, is there another way of support that she needs, and we definitely will be there.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I'm personally asking for. Is there's a lot of people, to a degree, I know people don't like it, but Winston Faison, I mean, to Richie, you compare the two. This guy is being. I haven't seen one article written about something Richie Taylor done in a negative light, which is a lot to go on. But they destroyed Winston Faison over and over again. You got all these other things going on. I would just hope that the Guardians can at least run to the aid of people that are being not treated fairly. I don't think in life, people might have different opinions. Like, you may not like me, I may not like you, but something, take your feelings aside. There's a job to do, and there's a representation of the people you represent. And that's what I think is missing, especially in the police department, and especially in this administration. This Eric Adams administration. And the last thing I was going to show you, and I wanted to talk to you about, is very recently, there's been nothing but, I don't know, 1,000 scandals under Eric Adams. Ingrid Lewis Martin gets indicted not once, but twice, right? And then the same week, you have Winnie Greco. Thank God, no relation to me. I don't know her. Thank God. She goes to a reporter with a potato chip bag. And in a potato chip bag, there's a red envelope. And it wasn't $100. It ends up being $300, we find out, because Greg Smith reported on that in the city. So then Eric Adams is finally asked about this. I believe it was with Bloomberg. I just want to play this for you, because this guy always runs to the same kind of verbiage. So let's hear what Eric Adams has to say about that entire incident with Winnie Greco and the indictment of Ingrid Lewis Martin.
You had the situation with Ingrid, Jesse Hamilton as well. And then you also had the situation with Winnie Greco. Just what's your thoughts on what happened with Winnie Greco? And then also, it was, I saw by Friday, it was a week.
Yeah, no, not to me. I had 237,000 migrants and asylum seekers. I inherited COVID. I inherited a city that was hemorrhaging jobs. I had thousands of illegal guns on our streets, ghost cars on our streets, cannabis shops are open. People wrote off New Yorkers. Not only was I dealing with those who were committing crimes, I had to deal with rats everywhere. But look, everywhere that we dealt with, We got up every day and we did the job.
But
More jobs in our city.
the red envelope in a potato chip bag. I mean, when you heard about this, what did you think of it?
First, I want to go back. More jobs in our city history. 12 months of tourism. 12 months of Broadway, the best in the city's history. Unemployment drop. Crime drop. Illegal vehicles off our street. All of those things. I'm not going to be judged by a red envelope in a paper bag. I'm going to be judged by how I improved the lives of New Yorkers. It was a stupid thing to do. I don't understand the conversation she had with the reporter. I don't have the history of it. It's not something that we would do in our campaign. I made that clear. I don't know what that was about. And now she's no longer volunteering, or she was never an employee of the campaign, and she was long time no longer in City Hall. So only the reporter and Winnie can explain to us exactly what that was about. I don't know what it was about, and it's not acceptable behavior on my part.
Let's talk.
Now, Pat, he says it's not acceptable behavior. This is a guy that had 7 burner phones, one from the New York City Police Department, which I can't comprehend why a mayor who's technically he's a civilian shouldn't even have an NYPD phone. And then, Pat, he's always talking about rats. I think it's a subliminal message to the low information base, whatever little dwindling base he has. I mean, I don't know what to say about that incident. That is bizarre that even happened. And I just think it's disgraceful the way he's pivoting and shifting on that too. To pivot and shift his own line. And he says, he's talking about his record, which crime is down. Yeah. A woman just got killed in Harlem yesterday. The Bronx is on fire. You have 2 mass shootings inside of like 2.5 weeks, but he keeps putting these things up. And I think it also affects members of the police department because they're being overworked. They're running around. There's no direction. And they're getting blamed for things when really the leadership has no clue what they're doing. And in conjunction with Mr. Eric Adams. I don't know if you have anything to say about all of that. And this ridiculous envelope thing that happened. This is bizarre what happened.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The envelope thing, I think it caught everybody off guard. I don't know the context. There's one thing that he did say that I would agree with is that we really would need to know more from the reporter, like what took place, because I really don't know what was the purpose of her guilt. Like, was it something that she was afraid that the lady saw that she didn't want her to report? But it could mean it could be any reason. So I think once we get more clarification, you can really. It does look really bad though. Like, I don't know what was the reason behind it.
Yeah,
and I'm not surprised at the response. Listen, anybody who's on that level or that stage of dealing with like political responses, their PR team is probably going to tell them before you go on, stick to this, no matter what they say. So that's kind of like something that you would expect. That's an expected response.
Yeah, King Cujo says it best there. Only truth he said in that sentence that she has not been an employee. Lord, she is still a volunteer, a lie with a grain of truth that hides and keeps them away from wrongdoing. You know something? Ingrid Lewis Martin is still a volunteer. She's still a volunteer with 2 indictments on her. And Winnie Greco was also a volunteer, but they both worked for him as well. So they're both involved in all this stuff. It is unbelievable. And remember, he keeps saying crime is down. The soccer mom says crime is down. The chief of the department, with his triple fat necks, this is the safest city in America. And it's just, you look with your own eyes, Pat, the troops are defeated or depleted, I'd say. They have a defeatist attitude going on in their rank and file going, there's like no hope. They have no hope, and they're being worked to death and punished to death. It's just, I don't know. Where do you see this? Where do you see the future of the police department in New York City? Because it's like, I'm telling you, the troops are depleted right now. They really they have their head down and they'll do the job, but it's like the train that ran out of steam because of everything going on around them.
No, you absolutely, you're 100% right. And I think it's not the biggest reason, but it's a large contributing factor is the police department definitely could use more people, and then I think that they should look at how they utilize their people. So getting people is one. Then secondly is how do you utilize people? Because there are things out there that may not be necessary. I think that the recent administration came in and tried to figure out how many of those things they could get rid of. And, I don't know I don't know how that worked out, but in terms of the metrics, because there's going to be people on different sides of the metrics of it. But getting more people, utilizing their people properly, and then it goes back to like quality of life. Like these guys, cops are like, you can't get off. People are being denied days off to go to funeral. Like I had a cop tell me there was no excuses. She had to come into work and take lost time to go to her grandfather's funeral because there was no excuses. So they said, come in, sign in, stay for 2 hours, then take a look. Like all that goes to morale, right? So we have to figure out, and then it goes back to common sense decision making. And then bosses being bosses. Like you said, this goes back to like having qualified people and having people who could stand on something, right? That's why you don't need just anybody. You need a qualified person. Because if I'm a boss and somebody says, this is my grandfather's funeral, I don't think anybody in this department could beat you down for you giving somebody the day off for a funeral, for their grandfather's funeral, even with the no excusals. Like I remember I had a young man, I reached out to Chief Obey when she was the chief of training. I was the new president of the Guardians. Somebody reached out to me and said, oh, this young man in class, he's looking miserable. Like they knew something was off. He was in a mandatory training. So they spoke to him and he was told if he missed the day of the training, he would have to start all over, and the training doesn't come around that often. But his aunt had passed. The aunt had kind of raised him like a mother. And it was the day of her funeral. And he was like, if I miss the training, I got to start all over and it don't come around. I called Chief Obey. So she laughed. She's like, Pat, this department could be cold, but we're not that cold. Give me the guy's information. We'll get him off. So it's just going back to people who has common sense and making, these decisions. And something crossed my mind when you had said something before you play the video, and I just definitely wanted to point it out to show you how these things, I never take these things personal, right? These things are strictly business. Like I said, as we speak about the podcast, listen, I know I've been featured a number of times, but I never take it personal. And I look at it like you guys have a job to do, right? As advocacy work, making sure people are aware of things same way I do. And something crossed my mind when you were talking about that. I don't remember the exact words you used, but we spoke about it being about business. And I remember God bless his soul, Eric's son, one of my correspondence secretary, she reached out to me. She's like, listen, there's a fundraiser, and we have a group chat of like 1,400 people. There's a fundraising thing going around. I know you don't have a really good relationship with these guys, but I wanted to know, was it okay to share it with Alabama to donate? I'm like, absolutely. Like, my political or ideology differences has nothing to do with something like that, right? And so, I wanted to point out to you, like these things are important, and I say this to say that you guys have value, no matter whether I'm on the target or somebody else. There's value in it. Keep it going. Keep these things strong. Keep holding people accountable. That's like one of the biggest things that I can leave with.
Eric Dim is actually in the chat. He says, "Thank you, Pat."
No, listen, there's no thanks needed. Like this, like that, like any human being, that's what we're supposed to do. But I just want to, I just want to point out to show that none of this stuff is ever personal. It's like, hey, listen, I'm a public person. If I'm doing something, if I do something wrong, kick my ass. Well, now you got my number. You could call me and kick my ass. But that's what these things are all about. And I want to make sure I leave your audience with that's my feelings on these things.
Well, thank you for saying that. I mean, Eric Sanders said it best. He said, absolutely. It's for me, the only thing it was never really personal, Pat. The problem was, I think, two individuals in particular, one who says he's a deputy mayor, he's a clout chaser, and the other one says he's the chief of department. I think they took things personal. And knowing one of them pretty good, I could tell you that's the way they are. And I think they took what's been said here, not as criticism, but literally personal. And they weaponized with the former members of this police department and no longer around and try to do crazy things like what? Threaten. I don't know if you know, Jimmy Rodriguez threatened John McCarry online.
No, I never even heard of the Jimmy Rodriguez got to the day that we spoke, and you were telling me I never even heard of him prior.
There was a whole investigation that you're going to be hearing about more and more and more about that Internal Affairs did because they were being threatened by someone called All Cops Are Woke online. The Finest Unfiltered has been under attack. For what reason? People calling us rats and snitch. I'm not even a police officer. And let me tell you something, a rat, which again, who keeps talking about rats? We just played that video. Rat, rat, rat. Who talks like that? Okay. You can't be a rat if you're A civilian, and B, if you're reporting on someone's illicit behavior / criminal behavior, how are you a rat? How do you think things happen in the street? You get punched in the face, the cop comes over to you. What happened, kid? I can't be a rat. Meanwhile, the guy that punched you is staring you right in there and going like this. What are you supposed to do? So people don't, I mean, they lost their integrity and morals a long time ago, but this department has done a lot of things with just a couple individuals weaponizing it against certain people here, including myself. And I was weaponized when I was on the job for what happened. Marlon Bethel, okay? And it's wasn't never meant to be personal, but they made it personal. Those individuals, the guys I mentioned, are making it personal when it's really, if you just stood up and did the right thing and were transparent, none of this would ever happen. And that, I think that seems to be the problem. And we're only pointing out not only the hypocrisy, but laws, internal administrative guides, things like that are easy to nitpick. I'll tell you one that's easy. And another thing you maybe want to get behind, but Eric Adams' sexual assault case, which involves the Guardians. I don't know if you know, the lawsuit goes way back to the early 90s. Lorna Beach Medora was a PAA in transit, which is where Eric, I guess, met her at, not the Guardians meetings, the transit Guardian meetings. He said, I don't know this woman. Or he tried to degrade her like he degrades everyone else. But she was a member of the transit Guardians, and she claimed she was sexually assaulted by Eric Adams, was it 30 plus years ago. So I would hope, and she's gone bankrupt. They call her crazy. Yet the department, which illegally represents Eric Adams under GML 50K2, you cannot represent somebody in the scope of their duties. Sexual harassment, assault, rape does not fall underneath those scope of duties. But yet he's being represented by 7 city attorneys. He had Alex Spiro. He got away from that. So he had 7 attorneys fighting for this one case that he should be paying out of his own pocket. And I just hope that maybe if Lorna Beach Medora will reach out to you too, because she was a member of the Guardian. She was a Transit Guardians member. Eric wasn't. He started, like I said, he was doing that whole 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement. She was an actual member, and they met, and he's acting like he doesn't know her. And clearly she's traumatized. This affected her whole life. And I would hope that, I don't know if there's an olive branch to extend because it's, the women are victimized and then they get ignored, especially on this job. I know how the term goes. Oh, she's a whatever, for doing things. And some things, rightfully so, some of the behavior I've seen is crazy. But I don't think someone all these years later would come out to lie about something when they've been clearly traumatized. And this guy is known to smear people like he's been smearing her. And allegedly, Pat, they can't find Eric's files. They were destroyed during Hurricane Sandy. Something I had to live through in the 60th precinct. We lost power. I was outside with water up to here. He says the files are missing. I call that BS. So this is what's going on. Just another person I just off the top of my head I remember, because she was a part of the Guardians, and she should be having some, if she needs any help from you guys, help her out, because that's BS. Special Hagen said this, and Sylvia Hines Radix pointed out that as a transit cop, Adams was not a city employee at the time, and his legal representation should not be paid for by the city. Judge Hines Radix lost her job. That is a fact, by the way, Pat. That is
wow.
So just so you know.
So one of the things I'm slightly familiar with that case because, as president of the Guardians, I actually kind of saw some of the stuff that came in. I don't know her personally because, of course, that was before my time. I'm only 35 years old. I think some of these things probably happened in like the 80s or 90s.
Yeah,
But yeah, of course, no,
that.
we listen, because we know that these things do exist. Like, unfortunately, some of these ladies are treated in ways that they're not supposed to be treated. There's advancements that's made. And so we would never not support anyone, especially a Guardians member. I do know, though, and I know this because of what came into us. A lot of this transpired under the Transit Guardians, which they dissolved, I think, in '95 when the Guardian with Transit merged into the regular police department. But nevertheless, listen, if she ever reaches out to us or needs our support in any way, we would definitely, I'm certainly open to sitting down, having a conversation with her, seeing, how I could be supportive. I'm always going to have a conversation. Like, if my schedule permits, I'm never going to say I'm not going to talk to somebody, right? We may not agree on everything. We may have different viewpoints on certain things, but it would always be worth the conversation, in my opinion. So I say that to say, yeah, if she reaches out to me, there's no way I'm going to deny or even having a conversation with her and just hearing her version of things and seeing what does she think the Guardians, how does she feel we could support her?
Yeah, that's all I'm asking for again, because I see that she's been much, maligned by Eric and his attorneys, and I know for a fact that they knew each other. He's trying to act like, oh, I don't know her. Like he immediately jumped all over, and it's wrong. And if this did happen, she's had a bad life, and you could point to that incident could have changed and scarred someone forever. Eric was a powerful guy. He was Al Sharpton's guy, another guy shouldn't have been associating because he's a convicted criminal himself. But all of this during that time period. But again, she was a member of the Transit Guardians. I think they did merge. But again, the women, we have to support them. I'm not saying, like, we always say believe all women. Some of them will say some crazy stuff that never happened. You gotta vet what was said, see if there's evidence, and then you go from there. But in these cases, there's a lot to be said about these guys. And, it's one allegation after the other. This one has evidence. This one's text message. This one. And again, with this one, when he comes out and says these things and he's, maligning this woman who clearly was a member of the Guardians, she was. And I just think that if she needs any help, she should get it. Because
Yeah, no,
it's
I
just
agree
not
with
right.
you.
It's
I
like,
agree with you.
I don't want cops or people to be discarded years after retirement when no, it shouldn't be that way. You put in your time. People should support you if something occurred or whatever, That's just how I see it. So
Absolutely. No, I'm in agreement.
I say I've had you for you've been a trooper. You've been on for 2 hours. You had a lot. We've spoken about a lot. You answered a lot of questions, a lot from the crowd. Is there anything else you want to add to this? Is there anything you want to say to the viewers, to the public, anything at all before I let you go?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here. I really enjoyed this experience. Um, you know, uh, Anything that you made me aware of a number of things. It may be, it may be perceived that, oh, he knows this, he knows that. Like, I got so many things going on that a lot of times when I hear certain things, I'm like, wait, I didn't know that. Because there's so, and the other thing is, like, we talked about the different fights. I know a lot of times people are like, why isn't the Guardians in this? Why isn't the Guardians in that? And it's like anything else. You got to pick and choose your battles at what time, because there are certain things that I'm trying to get accomplished. There's certain conversations, meetings, fights. So just if somebody points it out and something I can get to at the time, I try not to have fires everywhere, right? Because sometimes you don't get anything accomplished. So I find things that's meaningful. I try to make sure I put my foot on the gas, try to get it addressed. As soon as that gets addressed, then I can move along. So it's not that I'm discarding anything or discounting anything. A lot of times especially if it's a big, like this psychological thing is going to be a really hot topic. And so a lot of my attention is probably going to go on there. Doesn't mean other things aren't important. And then I also like to be the face for my organization. I do most of the speaking. I do have a board. I have vice presidents. But I think it's important that I do, because I think it's important that I do the speaking. So this way they're not targeting anyone else. I realize, hey, there's a possibility of, being targeted for certain comments, for appearing on certain places. It comes with the job, and the day that you can't do that job anymore, I feel like you should step to the side and let somebody else do it. So that's one of the reasons why, to answer that question, why I don't get involved in everything, because like I'm trying to make sure I'm focused and I'm getting things done on what I'm focused on. But always willing to circle back. And again, I'll leave you with this. Your situation is total bullshit. What happened to you? Same thing with the COVID guys. And I spoke to some other people about it, like, Pat, what's your thoughts? And I'm like, no, I'm well aware, and I'm willing to be supportive. Like, somebody, it's not my fight in that I don't know all the details behind it, but I'm certainly willing to support in any way that someone who's dealing with it feel that I could support.
All right, I mean, it's fair. I like to say this, thank you for coming on. I'm going to once again use Eric Dim's line: opposition meets opportunity. I think that was pretty informative what was discussed here. Your view on things. Also, you represent the Guardians. If the Guardians can help or they're supportive of people, we do have issues that are going on that also you were addressing as well. Things that are current, and the arbitrary ways of how the department looks at things. And I don't think you're not talking for the department or anything. So it was Pat Gordon, and I think it was very informative. And I think maybe I don't know if you want to come back on in the future, or maybe you want to come on with Eric and John at a certain point. But I think now we have an open dialogue, which is always better than just everyone being quiet and pointing fingers. I think it's a move and a step in the right direction, because we could all sit here and argue and scream and point fingers, but unless there's a substantive a conversation, nothing's ever going to change. So I think that's what we did here today. And there's olive branches to other people like a Timmy Pearson, definitely Winston Faison. But if Timmy wants to come on, I'm all ears, because I'm like the worst critic of his. And just like people would say, how the hell did Pat Gordon end up on Sal Greco's show? Timmy Pearson might be someone everyone wants to see or hear from and say, wow, those two guys did a show, because you would think opposites, how do we get along? But sometimes you just have a dialogue, and that's how politics works, folks.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much, Sal, and keep up the great work that you guys are doing. And I'm here if you need me.
Oh, definitely, Pat. Thank you once again. And I think if anything, any issues arise in the future, I won't hesitate to reach out to you and have you on. Or if John, and like I said, John and Eric will probably want you on a certain point as well, and discuss other issues or any further issues that occur. But I hope you have a good time in Albany. Hope you have a good weekend, and say hello to Gabby Walsh when you see her for me.
Will do. Which I always do. I love Gabby, so I will do, though, certainly.
Yeah, you tell us the Sal Greco show will always be supporting her. But thanks to Pat Gordon for coming on. No matter how people feel about it, he's on here. He was here. I can't say the same for other people right now. And Eric Sanders said it best here. Great show. Remember, dialogue is the key to productive conflict resolution. That's how it is. You can't just sit here in an echo chamber. You got to reach out sometimes, whether you like it or you want to bite your tongue. And hats off to Pat, who, again, just so you know, as many people here like to hear this, there were plenty of people in his ear that didn't want to see this. And I'm talking about the people that say, it's a small podcast. You're small. It's anything but that. If I tell you who was ringing his phone, you wouldn't believe it. So just so you know, this show, this network has a big impact on things. So I just want to reach that out there. And again, look, Special Hagen says it, and she's been critical in the comments and writing. Look what she says. It took courage for him to come on the show, even if he said a whole lot of nothing with a half-assed apology. So, see, just to give you a look into things, if you want to look at it. I mean, same thing goes to Corey Pegues, but it does take courage to say, I'm going to sit there with a guy who's been critical of me. And, things could go really south, or things could go, but I'm willing. Listen, you know me, I'm a guy that likes to lay back, and, I'll ask you whatever and say, what needs to be asked. But I think it was very informative. I think a Tim Pearson on the show would be, I don't know, you'd probably have even more viewers than you had today, because Tim Pearson would be something else. But Timmy, the olive branch is extended. So we'll see if that ever happens. Without any further ado, though, the best part of the show, the producer's take with Jack, who probably was like, I don't know what you take about everything, because it's a historic thing. We had Pat on, and to cover a lot of issues, whether people like the answers or not. He gave you answers. He wasn't shying away from anything, and I think it was something that's productive. I think, like I said, having a dialogue is better than just keeping your mouth shut and pointing fingers.
Absolutely. And he stayed on the podcast with us so long that I felt like my hair started turning gray. No, but in all seriousness, he did a fantastic job kind of laying out his perspective and point of view on things. And you have to give him credit for sitting in front of a camera and a microphone in a hotel room in Albany, no less. I know that you touched on this at the end, but he's actually at a PBA meeting upstate right now and took time out of his day, 2 hours out of his day, to come on the podcast and speak with us. But the thing that stuck with me the most that he mentioned is that that allegiances in the NYPD on the job now are more based on friendships than they are on race. There's an outside perception that this is all based on societal organizations, whether you're black, white, Hispanic. There's a Jewish society, there's a Bangladesh one. There's pretty much a fraternal organization within the NYPD for everyone. And people think that's what determines promotions, job advancement, all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, when I look at the photos of the upper echelon of the NYPD, hear about some of the cronyism that took place, none of it really has to do with race. The thing that matters is the allegiance and the loyalty to one another. A black person will take a white person who's loyal to them and vice versa, way before they take someone of their own race who they question their loyalty to. So that's something that's big that a lot of people have discussed. Has there been DEI initiatives within DCAS, the Department of City Administrative Services? Absolutely. There's been no doubt about that, and they don't make it a secret either. But at the end of the day, it ultimately has to do a lot more with who you care about on the job and who you've become friends with than anything else. So I was really happy to hear that come from his mouth and his perspective specifically.
Yeah, and I think also I'm asking, he is the president of the Guardians, and I think the Guardians has let down a lot of people that have been victimized. But now, reach out to them, and they're going to start. I mean, they were prominent under Eric Sanders, and they need to become prominent again. That's what I'm trying to get at. And they don't get prominent unless you challenge the authority and are willing to do that. So you have to be willing to take on Jessica Tisch, Eric Adams, John Shell. You have to do that. Or it just either your members value or, you personally value. And that's a decision that needs to be made here. I mean, look, he discussed that. Let's give him the benefit of doubt. People should reach out and see how it's handled, and if the Guardians do represent people and will go out there and advocate and bang the drum and show up to court and do all that stuff. He did show up for the 31 officers, by the way, with the unlicensed psychologist stuff where the job is trying to railroad those guys. He did show up for that. So that could be a start, And I'm just saying that's what we're advocating for. That's what we want. And that's what members want. So I know the comments of, people don't like what you heard, but listen, some people are going to like it. Some people aren't going to like it. You can't please everyone. If you please everyone, it's going to be a disaster anyway. So I think it went well. It's the best of what could happen, but it's an open dialogue now. So we're standing on good ground. And I think moving forward, we could always reach out and we'll have Pat back on. Or if there's other issues that arise, and I think there's going to be plenty with this administration. I mean, look, I showed him Eric Adams' video. I got him to talk about that stuff, and people wanted that. I think everyone got a little bit of something, but again, like I said, not everyone's going to be happy, it's usually how it works.
This was a logical first step to trying to do that X space that was promised by John Shell. Remember, it was his promise, not anyone else's. No, but Pat did a really noble thing in coming on the podcast today, because most other people that we've reached out to, whether it be members of city council, state legislator, whatever it may be, NYPD members, both active and retired, they're very hesitant to say anything about the department, good, bad, indifferent. Some of them have even contacted their attorneys to ask whether they should make an appearance or whether they could do so. So you have to give him credit for coming on. Mm-hmm. And to his point at the very end, there's only so many fires you can put out at once. With a department this large, there's always bound to be issues taking place, and it's very hard for him to kind of wedge himself into the middle of all of them. Also, the guy's trying to protect his own job, his own reputation, his own credibility, so you do have to be respectful of that fact as well, because the NYPD is a very powerful organization, and you don't want to be going head-to-head with them over everything for fear of retaliation. So I think that does need to be taken into account as well.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I think It is, I asked a lot of things that people want to hear about, a lot of issues that happen. He answered questions from the crowd. You can't really ask for more than that. I mean, you may not get the answers that you like, but this isn't like when certain people go to a radio show and they hand over a sergeant shield and it's like a love fest, and we're going to ignore everything these guys have done, because that happens too. I didn't do that, but you ask what you have to ask. And, there's things I broke here too, like this latest thing where this Lieutenant Jablonski got transferred to 2-5 precinct because allegedly Richie Taylor, went over there and said he parked his car somewhere. Some crazy stuff. He's taking away the radios to the Shamram guys. It's just wild stuff going on. And again, I see it as, okay, we're treating one guy differently. You treat the other guy. So it's like this never ends, and it needs to, because if discipline isn't fair, it's arbitrary, and you can't be like that. Because what am I going to say? I saw you take a stick of gum. You took a stick of gum. Well, I'm going to let you off, and I'm going to put you in jail for 150 years. That's kind of what we're seeing, and you can't do that with an equal opportunity employment job. So, I just want to point all these things out. And again, I have olive branches to everyone. I think Tim Pearson's like a pay-per-view if he was on this show. But Winston Faison himself would be, he could explain what he was explaining about the investigation. It's not what you were told. You were told something that he answered, and he's not being charged for things. It's all, again, they got you thinking what they want. It's perception management by the police department. They call their little, hatchet person in the New York Post and the Daily News or whatever. And the Daily News is actually more accurate than the Post. I hate to tell you that. They're not accurate when they report on President Trump. Anything else is pretty accurate. So when they start talking about it, and they have a skewed view, the Daily News, but they will print facts. But the Post wrote a whole hit piece, and they didn't even bother to tell you, oh yeah, by the way, we got this deputy chief that's running around using a helicopter for personal use and basically end-arounding Faison. Oh, Eric Adams did that as well. And, the police commissioner now is doing it. But we're going to charge this guy like he just killed. Come on. Now, I'm not saying Winston isn't maybe guilty of certain things, but he's certainly not the guy, again, the biggest spoke in the wheel. He's a spoke in the wheel. There's many spokes in the wheel that are ahead of him that you're all ignoring, but you won't treat the same. And again, that's the problem. That's all I'm saying. Because, like I said, I was a victim of this, and I don't want to see other people get dogged out in the same fashion.
And over the next few months leading into presumably Zohran Mamdani taking over as mayor, we're going to start to hear a lot more about members of Adams' administration who are no longer protected as well. But it was great to have Pat on today because we agreed to disagree about certain things. Members of the police department, oftentimes, whether it be on social media, personal interactions, by phone, whatever it may be, get mad when you disagree with them. No, we're trying to advocate for better things. We're trying to get policies that benefit the people in your city. We're trying to help the employees of your department. Nothing we're saying or doing is done with malicious intentions, and it's important to take that into account. With that being said, I think we can segue into our next discussion, which revolves around the Tolchin research poll that was released last night by Ben Tolchin, who manages the firm. He is a former strategist who worked under Mayor Eric Adams back when he was the borough president of Brooklyn. And here are the results of his most recent poll. I'm going to go through the results, assuming that all 5 candidates stayed in, and then I'm going to go over to head-to-head. So Mamdani's kind of the leader in the pack still at 42%, Cuomo at 26%, Sliwa at 17%, Adams at 9%. He's now less than 10%. Walden at 3%. As you'll notice, most notably, the distance between Cuomo and Sliwa, 9%, is much smaller than the distance between Mamdani and Cuomo, which is 16%. And that indicates that Sliwa ultimately has a better chance in this race than people are letting on. This part, though, really got me because it doesn't make any sense when you think about it. Perhaps it's because the New York City Apartments Association, which helped fund this poll, also donated to Andrew Cuomo's campaign. And they didn't just donate to Cuomo. No, they gave him $1 million, a 7-figure campaign contribution, which is very rare in today's day and age. So in a head-to-head battle, they had Cuomo winning 41%. And Mamdani, who sat at 42% in the previous poll, would actually lose a percentage point, which hard to believe. So Cuomo would double his tally. Mamdani would lose 1 percentage point. And then if Eric Adams was the leader of the pack, who everyone coalesced behind, he would still lose to Mamdani by 3 percentage points. So Adams would shoot up from 9% to 42%. Cuomo would double his tally, and Mamdani would remain pretty much relatively unimpacted. I don't believe that for even a millisecond. I looked at that poll and I literally burst out laughing. I'm like, this thing, it can't be serious, Sal. How do you possibly follow this logic, even if you're trying to slander someone?
Well, that's what it is. It's done, and it's called a suppression poll. First of all, the likely voters, those were skewed. First of all, a likely voter doesn't mean a registered voter. It means like I am likely to vote, and nobody does any more homework. So they could say they live in New York City. Who the hell knows what's going on with them? But that likely voter is not a registered voter. It's then skewed 75% Democrat. Even in today's world, where it's, I believe, 7-1 Democrat in New York City, but it's probably a little less than that because independents are involved. So it's kind of like 6-3-2 or 6, kind of the formula. You had like 15 or whatever it is, 10%, like that. 12% Republican, 11% independent, 3% other. The independents are what's going to make or break this election. Another thing is all this, if it's only one, if it's only one. Eric Adams would have been destroyed in any primary. He can't win. That's just a fact. His unfavorability is at 69%, the highest. As Roger Stone told me, and he's done this for 40 plus years, he's never seen a candidate with that number for unfavorability. He can't win, okay? So just get him out of the way. The one-on-one is never going to happen. All 4 people are on the ballot. They're going to be going. They're not. No one's withdrawing. No one's leaving. No one. They're going to show up on the ballot. When you show up on election day, those 5 names will show up. The 4 that we mentioned and Jim Walden. I like Jim, but I mean, he's been floundering at whatever it is, 2%. I don't know what kind of chance he really has. But the other people involved, I think this is what's not being mentioned is donations. Well, although Mamdani gets donations, he might have $2 million, $1 million. The majority of that is from out of the city. He doesn't have as many donors in the city as Curtis Sliwa. Curtis Sliwa has the most people by a bigger number for the donations in the city. And that it looms very large for an election. He's raising more money in the city. He's everywhere. He's been going up and up and up every day. Like I've been telling you, Mamdani, this poll is skewed. He's probably in the 30 to 35 range. If Sliwa in that other poll was at 25, 26%, and 25, 26% is Cuomo, that's been rearranged. Cuomo's dropping along with Adams, who's dropped like a rock. And Curtis is now the guy who is surging. He actually looks like the Democratic primary where Mamdani crept up on everyone all the way till the end when he was 35 points behind. And then election day, boom, he's way ahead of Cuomo. You're seeing this dynamic happen. Now, September 1st is a couple of days from now. Now the real race begins. All the adults are coming back to the room. So the children that are running around saying free this, free that doesn't work. And also, just so you know, Mamdani is the same policies as Eric Adams. City grocery stores it's going on right now. The socialist grocery stores, there's 6 of them right now on the Eric Adams. Everything he wants is already going on. You're getting another version of what you had, Eric Adams and de Blasio. Do you want that? He has no idea how to handle crime. We had Ed Ra on. Ed Ra told you this guy doesn't even show up to vote for bills. He's an activist masquerading as a politician. The adults are coming back, and they will have the final say over what's going to happen in the next 2 months. But I expect Curtis to surge all the way up to and very close to Mamdani, if not pulling this off. This is not going to be 45%. That is an outright lie. I don't know who's doing these numbers. They're skewing this. This poll is a fugazi, like I like to say.
So if I were to kind of do a breakdown, I would say that Mamdani is probably in the 35-40, and this is as of right now, by the way. This is not my end prediction. Mamdani's probably in the 35-40 range. Cuomo's probably in the 20-25 range. Sliwa's probably loosely 15 to 25%. This margin between Cuomo and Sliwa of 9% seems way too high for me. I think that it's more like 3%. I think Sliwa's breathing
But
right
then,
down the neck to
but
the
the margin of 16% to Mamdani is an outright lie. I am telling you, since this guy won, it's the same people that are supporting him. All these endorsements are all like, okay, well, when you get in, you're going to do me a favor. That's all that is. That's what the endorsement of the union and all that. You don't see these guys flocking to Sliwa because he doesn't want to do favors, so they hate him. And obviously, Eric and Cuomo, they've been in bed with those guys forever. So now Mamdani is the guy. So they're going to go to him. And if Mamdani's willing to sell his office, which he doesn't even know what an office is, if he's willing to sell the office to the highest bidder, they will endorse him and he will win. Like they'll just throw so much money, he'll have millions of dollars to play with. They're not really doing that either because you still have people that are going to Eric. I don't know why he can't win. So again, that whole thing is skewed. In reality, the original poll that I saw that had it was registered voters that were voting and it was picked down the middle. You saw the real numbers. Mamdani was at like 29 or 30%. Cuomo's at 26. Curtis at 25. Eric Adams is nowhere to be found. He's fighting with Jim Walden. That's basically what you're going to see. And it doesn't matter who, no one's dropping out of the race. And if they did, it doesn't affect anything. There's not going to be a one-on-one. When the low information voter shows up, he's going to see the ballot with 5 names on it, whether they drop out or not. So again, no one's dropping out, especially these prideful people like Cuomo and Eric. So these polls are skewed. They're intended to suppress people. And again, I expect this to be very close. And shout out to Curtis. I believe Curtis was in this room very briefly. I saw him pop up on the screen. So shout out to Curtis. Remember, you are my pick. I am behind you all the way. And hopefully you can pull this off. The race is going to get crazy. It's only, August 28th today? You still have a few more days. September's around the corner, and that's when the race is going to matter.
So it's going to be really interesting to see how this thing evolves, assuming people don't drop out. There's probably a 0% chance or close to it that Sliwa, Adams, and Cuomo all drop out. We all know how much pride and the ego Eric Adams has. He's not dropping out. Same thing can be said for Andrew Cuomo, even though he's a disgraced governor who was forced to resign. Sliwa has a very good chance at winning as things stand now. Also, for all three of those guys, they spent a lot of time on the campaign trail preparing their campaign, and they've also raised a lot of money and spent it, some of which that they would have to pay back if they dropped out, because remember, you have to pay back matching funds if you end up dropping out of race. So financially speaking, it's very unlikely. I did propose yesterday in an article that I wrote, and I tagged Jim Walden in it because he's kind of been the peacemaker in all of this, that if they are going to form a coalition, you need to wait until October 1st. That gives you 2 weeks until the first debate.
No one's doing it.
Five weeks.
That's just a pipe dream. I'm telling you once again, no one is dropping out of that race.
No one is dropping out, but if you are going to do it, you should give it about a month and change in advance so you can stage this all-out blitz to get whoever your choice is.
But again, November 4th is going to come, and I pick up a ballot, and I'm in that thing in the voting. It's going to say Andrew Cuomo, Eric Adams, Curtis Sliwa, Zohran Mamdani, Jim Walden. Oh, and that latest guy, that clout chaser from Florida who doesn't even live in New York. So I don't even know who he is, but he's a no shot. And
he's a crypto guy who supports Eric Adams. He's a
crypto guy that I have info on. I just haven't released it yet. So I don't know what kind of shot he has. Put him at -0.5%. I don't know, but that's what you're going to see on that ballot. So no matter who says I'm dropping out, when you go to that ballot, those names show up. That's what I keep telling people. So they're not going to drop out. No one's going to drop out when your name is already on the ballot. You paid for this stuff. So now you have to see it through. It's a 4-man race. with Jim Walden in the background. That's like kind of the way I see it right now.
Yeah, there's a very, as I just mentioned, all of this is fun to speak about in a theoretical scenario, but it's probably not going to happen in actuality. But the situation kind of favors Sliwa in a sense, because if Adams and Cuomo end up splitting votes and he's able to ply a couple away from them, take a couple away from Mamdani, all of a sudden he's slowly starting to move up. And the one thing that Sliwa's done differently than the other guys, as in addition to taking the beret off, which I think is smart because it allows people to see him in a little bit of a different light, he's been very aggressive about going to high crime neighborhoods, being seen and speaking to the people on the street in a way that Cuomo, Adams, and even Mamdani, who's made all these great videos but hasn't done this, hasn't really spoken to the public. So that's something that's working to Sliwa's advantage. It's going to help him win over some votes. And I really question kind of the methodology of these surveys. I talked about the demographic breakdown, the donors, the people who ran the survey, the company that oversaw it. But in saying that they polled 1,000 likely voters, like how likely are you to vote? That's clearly a PR twist where they're expecting the readers to take everything at face value because there's no context. Were you someone who voted in the last election and is really excited about maybe voting for Mamdani, but not so much Cuomo? Do you really like Sliwa, but you're not going to vote for him if you don't think he has a chance to win? So there's no real specifications about the conditions and circumstances surrounding any of these likely voters. And as such, that probability for error, something that we've seen throughout this election cycle, is very high. Remember the final poll that came out the day or 2 days before the Democratic primary that had Mamdani winning in the 7th round of ranked choice voting? Then in reality, he crushes Cuomo by 10 percentage points. The thing's over by 9 o'clock. We were sitting in our X space like this election's over. We don't have anything to talk about. Not really. There was a ton to still talk about, but it was very anticlimactic in that sense. So to everyone out there who's reading and interpreting these polls, look beyond the fine print. Read about who was polled. Read about the dates, because this was, only a week-long period. Read about the partisan breakdown. All of those things are very important when it comes to interpreting the data and not just looking at it and saying, oh, Mamdani has 50%. Because when you look beyond the surface, you're like, well, wait a second. I need to take this with a grain of salt, as I did. And that's part of reading and interpreting this data.
Yeah, well, I told you that one. So I don't think I don't think it really is what these guys are making, especially New York Post, who are in the tank for the soccer mom and Adams and Cuomo every day. So Special Hagan said Curtis has a lot of heart. He needs a strong team of deputy mayors and commissioners if he gets elected. And I know just the right guy to be the police commissioner, just so you know. So those suggestions will be passed along at a certain point. So I do think he has a real shot. I don't know about future Republicans. This is it. I think right now is the moment, because that young generation, that really low information people that are whatever scavenger hunt, they're going to be a majority voter, which is scary at one point. So be very careful what you wish for in New York City. But again, then the adults have to show up to the voting booth and say, okay, we're going to take over here. So just so people understand. I don't know if you have anything else, Jack. The Mets won. Nolan McLean looked great last night. So there he is, the next Tom Seaver. I don't know. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, and for anyone who might be going out to Citi Field on Friday night, make sure to bring some tongs with you, because Jonah Tong,
that's right,
the other top pitching prospect, is going to be making his major league debut. Just 2 starts in AAA, but he was outstanding with AA. Binghamton had, I believe, a 1.68 ERA or something like that. 2 fantastic outings in Syracuse. The Mets have found new life with this reboot that they've gotten with the rotation. They have been depleted by injuries and poor performances from Frankie Montas and Sean Manaea and Kodai Senga, who's made of glass. Clay Holmes hit a little bit of a wall when he reached that pitching innings limit. But lo and behold, you get Nolan McLean up to the big leagues. There's anticipation for Tong on Friday night. The lineup starts to look a little bit better. They're playing better defense. And all of a sudden, they're 4 games behind the Phillies, with the division now looking like it's within reach. And the Phillies lost Zach Wheeler for the season, the ace of their rotation as well. So the Mets have a real chance at winning the National League East and potentially making a run in the postseason if this pitching staff can continue to dominate at a high level. Can they beat the Dodgers in an NLCS rematch? I'm not going to say that yet. We'll wait and see. I want to see how this last month plays out first. But things are looking good and like they're finally trending in the right direction for the good old Metropolitans, as Steve Summers like to call them.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. I'm a big Met fan, but I don't know. They haven't been playing well, and they played down to people. But what can I say? Let's go Mets. Also, I believe it's Labor Day weekend, right? Labor Day's upon us, so no more the last time to wear the macas in your white suits, because after Labor Day, that's it. So I hope everyone's going to have a good Labor Day weekend. We'll see where the Mets lay. Also, next week, highlight starts again, so we'll be touching up on that. And I say, there it is, Labor Day. Do everything. Go enjoy the beach, because this is like the unofficial end of summer, really. Not for me. In Florida, it's always summer, but just to point that out. But do enjoy this moment, and we're down the stretch as far as politics goes with the election and all. So with that said, if you can, tomorrow 8:05 live on the Finest Unfiltered, they're gonna have a round table with John, Eric, and Marlon, or maybe someone else will pop on there to do the round table. Also, if you can, go back and watch yesterday's Executive Perspective. There was a lot of things said there that are pretty important about situations too. They played a video about that shooting at the John and Eric told you the friendly fire incident, that they laid out some information that now the New York Daily News ran with, actually. So, but they never credited John and Eric. Isn't that something? And, Rob and Ron yesterday were covering all of that. There's the video of that. And, there's a lot of questions there on why that incident happened, because it's friendly fire and it shouldn't have been. So all of that was on the show. It was a great show by Ron and Rob, as usual. Rob and Ron. And, so check that out, Executive Perspective. Also, if you can, 10-Foot Tavern, you can watch that on replay. That's on Tuesdays at 7:05. Executive Perspective on 17:05 on Wednesdays, 5:05 Eastern, and 10-Foot Tavern, 7:05 Eastern at night, 19:05 on Tuesday. So check them out on replays. You can check the shows out. But that's pretty much it from here in South Florida. So thank you all for staying with me with this, staying in the comments, being active. Shout out to you, Nighthawk. You've been very active, and it's a great show. Sal and Jack, big props to the chat. It was lit. Have a great day and be safe. Nighthawk out. Now, thank you to Stephen S., Felicia also. Thank you all for being here. Listen, we're doing this for you. If you can, though, please hit that like, share, subscribe button. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're on Rumble, like Rumble button. And if you're on X, please share this out, like this, send this out to all your friends, especially those in the low information bubble. And if you can, I have my own YouTube channel. It's called The Sal Greco Show Segments. Follow me on there if you can as well, because I put up stuff from the show that people, not everyone wants to watch the whole thing. So I put up some segments there and also some short clips. I also have my own TikTok, The Sal Greco Show. If you're on TikTok, follow me on there. Also on Instagram, I now have The Sal Greco Show on Instagram. So there's plenty of ways to see what goes on here, even if you miss 5 minutes or 20 minutes or don't have the time to just watch it during that day per se. You could do that for me. That'll go a long way with things. Because, again, I'm just trying to put out information and spread the knowledge, the wealth of knowledge that needs to be spread. But for everyone, please stay safe. It's Labor Day. I know Juve's around the corner, so NYPD, all my brother in there, be very careful out there. Remember, always watch your backs out there. And, have a good Labor Day. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the Mets, hopefully winning. And, that's going to be it from South Florida, once again, which is a sunny place for shady people.
So this is a biblical moment. When Jesus was on the cross, he said, God, forgive them, for they know not what they do. All these Negroes who are asking me to step down, God forgive them. Are you stupid?